Okay. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to Byju's Exam Prep IAS. This is Shyam Kagodia. Now, before I start the discussion, if there is no issue with the sound, please do let me know. Either give me a thumbs up or type YES. I do anything, but just give me an indication. Done. Thanks a lot. Let's continue. Let's start then. Okay. So, yesterday, what we have done, we continued with the discussion on international trade. Correct? We continued the discussion on international trade. Now, before we revise what we have done, as usual, today is Friday. Today is Friday. I hope you understand this. I've given you a list of articles. I believe around 19 articles are there. All of these current affairs from different newspapers except Hindu newspaper. I repeat, from different newspapers except Hindu newspaper. And as far as I'm concerned, if I've read Hindu newspaper, I've skipped those articles. For example, any article that appears in Hindu, automatically it will appear related to that concept. Automatically, articles will appear in other newspapers as well. So, as far as I'm concerned, I have ensured that these articles are those which have not been discussed in Hindu newspaper, and I've given you around 19 articles for this week. So this will be your assignment. Please download. There is a link which has been pasted very recently by the SME. If you still have a doubt, I'll paste the link again. Please let me know whether the link is visible to you or not. Okay, now there will be a comment. There will be a comment by me. And those who are wondering which is that particular comment, there is a comment by person Sham. I'm Sham. Okay, so there is a comment. Please, there is a link. Use that link. Download the articles. Read those articles. And some of you keep on telling me, sir, the pictures do not have clarity, etc., etc. Because please understand, some of the newspapers PDF version, they do not have very good pictures. That is the only reason. But do not worry about clarity of the pictures. Right? Your scope should not be, or your concern should not be how clear the picture is. Your concern should be, I should read, I should note down, I should prepare for these. Okay, so that is the precise reason. Read these articles, update your current affairs, and do let me know on Monday whether these articles are relevant for UPSC or not relevant for UPSC. Okay, now coming back to the discussion. Yesterday, what we have done, we have continued the discussion in international trade. Right, what we have discussed. We started with concept of exchange rate. What is exchange rate? Basically, it's how many units of domestic currency are required for converting into a foreign currency, for selling domestic currency and purchasing foreign currency, and vice versa. Okay. Then in exchange rate, we have discussed different types of exchange rates. Right. What is the factor? What are different factors which will influence exchange rate? Then we shifted to balance of payment. Balance of payment is basically a record of all import as well as export transactions. Again, please understand, all import and export transactions, meaning what? All the transactions that will lead to inflow of dollars and outflow of dollars from India. That is balance of payments. And within the balance of payments, we have discussed the current account deficit, the trade deficit, trade surplus, current account surplus, then the surplus in the capital account, the deficit in the capital account, BOP surplus, BOP deficit, BOP crisis. Right? All these factors, or let's say all these concepts, we have discussed yesterday only. Then we started discussing on the concept of foreign trade policy, FTP 2023. Right? What is foreign trade policy? Generally, until very recently, government used to announce once every 5 years a foreign trade policy. The last foreign trade policy was announced in 2015, right? 2015 to 2020. Because of the pandemic, it was extended. Because of the pandemic, it was extended till 2023. Now in 2023, we have a new foreign trade policy. And please understand, this does not have a expiry date. The current foreign trade policy does not have an expiry date. It will be implemented as long as Government of India wants it to be implemented. Now, what are the different provisions? What are the different points related to the FTP? For example, if we are shifting from incentivization to remission, right? We want to promote exports. We want to promote manufacturing sector. We want to promote the exports from the districts, etc. These are the important provisions. After that, we discussed WTO, World Trade Organization. World Trade Organization, it's a multilateral organization. Multilateral means multiple countries are members. It's a multilateral organization. It has started working from 1995. India is the founding member of the WTO. Before WTO, we had an arrangement. We had an agreement, GATT agreement, General Agreement on Trade and Tariffs. Right. So 1995, WTO was established. In WTO, the highest decision-making body is the Ministry of the Ministerial Conference, MC, Ministerial Conference. Ministerial Conference generally means once every 2 years, and below Ministerial Conference, because every day operations have to be taken care of, there is a General Council. General Council will meet, or it's a basic authority which will take care of day-to-day functioning of the World Trade Organization. Then we have discussed what are the important agreements, TRIPS agreements, GATS agreement, the agreement on subsidies and countervailing measures. There is one more agreement that we'll discuss later, agreement on agriculture. If possibly today, we might discuss, or if not today, on Monday, guaranteed we'll discuss agreement on agriculture, which is again related to WTO agriculture sector. Then we started discussing on the concept of economic integration, and now let's start. Economic integration basically is a policy of discriminatory reduction or elimination of tariffs. Right? This elimination of tariffs or reduction of tariffs is applicable to the members in the grouping. For example, I said yesterday, example of grouping, RCEP is a grouping. India, Australia, right? They have signed an agreement. There are only two members in the grouping. Mercosur is a grouping, right? ASEAN is a grouping, etc. Okay. Now that is basically the idea of economic integration. Now, economic integration will happen in different stages. There are different types or levels of economic integration. The first one is PTA, where only a small part of the trade between countries or the members of the grouping will be covered. That is PTA. Second one is a FTA, free trade agreement, where substantial part of the trade is covered. Substantial part. It could be 95%, it could be 99%, it could be 100% of the trade as well. So that is free trade agreement. And in the context of free trade agreements, right? For context of free trade agreements, you need to remember that we discussed two more concepts. One is SEPA and SECA. SEPA and SECA. Whatever the name could be there, whatever could be the name of the agreement, argument is very simple. If I say FTA, we generally talk about trade. But when you use the term comprehensive, economic cooperation, economic coordination, etc., etc., meaning is beyond trade. Trade is a part of the agreement. But beyond the trade, they might be talking about investments, intellectual property rights, etc. That is the reason they use the term comprehensive agreements. Okay. Now, in addition to this idea of a FTA, in addition to this concept of FTA, there is a term called as early harvest trade deal. Early harvest trade deal. Now, what is this early harvest trade deal? Let me explain it. Listen carefully now. We'll start the discussion. Start listening carefully. The concept of early harvest trade deal is that, let's say there are two countries, A and B. A and B, there are two trading partners who want to enter into a trade agreement. There are, let's say, these two countries are trading totally in, let's say, 200 goods and services. 200 goods and services. Now, out of these 200 goods and services, for some of the goods and services, it is very easy for them to negotiate, come to an agreement. Listen carefully now. Out of 200, let's say, for 20 goods and services, both of the sides can easily negotiate, come to an arrangement. Reduce or eliminate tariff, very quickly they will come to an agreement. Now, remaining 180 goods and services, it will take lot of time. It will take lot of time for them to negotiate, come to an arrangement. Now, whenever such situation is there, where some of the goods and services, they can easily come to an agreement within very short period of time, what member countries do is, they will sign one agreement or one deal, which is called as a early harvest trade deal. And in the early harvest trade deal, whatever goods and services they have come to an agreement right now, that is 20 goods and services they have agreed. So this early harvest trade deal will simply cover these 20 goods and services. and the negotiation regarding 180, remaining 180 will continue. It might take 8 months, it might take 9 months, it might take 1 year. They will complete the negotiations for remaining 180, and then finally after negotiating for 8, 10, 12 months, etc., now they will have a full-fledged agreement. Now they will sign an agreement for 20 as well as 180, that is 200 goods and services. So all of you are okay with the idea of a early harvest trade deal? Early harvest trade deal will cover those items where both of the members, that is the members in the block, members in the group, have come to arrangements, have come to an agreement very, very soon. Rather than waiting for full year, rather than waiting for negotiations to be completed for all the remaining, now they will simply sign a deal which will cover only these 20 goods and services. And those will start asking me, sir, is it always fixed 20 and 180? No, I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. I'm just giving you a hypothetical example. They might be trading in 100 goods and services. They might be trading in 90 goods and services. Number is not important. What is important? Out of all these goods and services, for some of them, you will come to agreement very soon. Now, the argument is, why should I wait for another 10 months? Why should I wait for another 12 months to sign a full deal? What I'll do is, I'll simply sign a deal right now, which will cover only these goods and services. And once later negotiations are done, we will sign a full-fledged deal covering all the goods and services. This deal is called as a early harvest trade deal. All of you okay with this? Can I go forward now? Can I go forward? This is called as early harvest trade deal. Now, next level of integration is customs union. After that, there is a common market, and the next one is economic union. Customs union, common market, and economic union. Now, what do you mean by customs union? Point number one, customs. Customs means duties. Customs means duties, import duties or export duties. Now, before I go forward, nobody replied to me. I want a reply from at least some of you. All of you okay with early harvest trade deal? Early morning, 6 o'clock, I'll suddenly ask, are you okay? Are you able to understand? Some of you will be still wiping your, right, let's say eyes. Some of you will be still waking up. Right? Some of you will be still, right, trying to understand what is actually happening. Is it economics or something else? Can I go forward now? Okay. Right. Sir, please repeat. I'll repeat it. Okay, let me start with another example. Another similar example, not related to trade. I'm assuming, I might be wrong, but don't worry. I'm assuming all of you are going to write UPSC prelims exams this year. Right? Okay, you will go to the examination hall. The paper will be given to you. Right? The question paper will be given to you. Now, please do let me know how many of you will use example 1 and how many of you will example 2. In example 1, you'll open the question paper. You'll see question number 1, difficult. You will skip it. You will go to question number 2, easy, very easy. You will solve question number 2. You look at question number 3, you know one statement, you do not know remaining 2 statements. You will skip it. You look at question number 4, you are hearing the word for the first time. You will skip it. Question number 5, very easy, you will solve it. This is example 1. Example 2, you'll open the question paper. First question is difficult. You will decide, until and unless I solve the first question, I will not go to the second question. Now, somehow you will solve first question. You will take half an hour, 45 minutes. And you'll go to the second question. That is also equally difficult. So you will again, right, like a Bahubali, you'll simply say, no way, I'll solve the second question, then I'll go to the third question. Somehow you will struggle and solve second question also. 1 hour is over. You'll go to the third question. Third question, again it is difficult. You will take another half an hour to solve third question. So very simple question to you all now. Will you practice the first example or will you practice the second example? Is there anybody in the classroom who will say, no, sir, I'll go with second example, right? It's very important for me to go question by question. It's very important for me to go question by question. No way I will skip a question like this. In that case, my dear, you might end up solving only 10 questions in the UPSC. Right? In the prelims, you might end up solving only 10 questions. But more importantly, let me ask you one more question. If you follow second example, to solve all the 100 questions, can I say you might end up taking 10 hours? Let me know. Right? Does it make sense or not? To solve all the 100 questions in example 2, you will take 10 hours. Rather than this, what makes sense? You know, limited time is there, 2 hours. As many questions as possible, you will be able to solve using example 1. Correct? That is, take care of easier ones first. Very simple. Take care of easier ones first, then look at difficult ones. Now apply the same logic for early harvest trade deal. I am one country, you are another country. We are both members of a group. We want to negotiate a trade deal. We want to sign a free trade agreement. And between both of us, I will export, let's say, 60 goods to you, and you will export 40 goods. Totally 100 goods are there. So if I keep on negotiating for all the 100 goods one by one, there will be certain goods where there will be a lot of discussion. Correct? There will be certain goods where a lot of negotiation has to happen between both the countries. That might take a very longer time period. Instead of that, we will come together and will decide out of 100 goods, 20 goods, no much discussion is required. Within 2 weeks, within 1 month, we'll decide, okay, these 20 goods, we will reduce or eliminate tariff. So what I'll do, I'll simply enter into a deal with you only for 20 goods. Is it okay? Only for these 20 goods, I'll enter into a deal. And remaining 80 goods, we will continue to negotiate. And once we complete negotiation for remaining 80, which might take another 9 months, which might take another 1 year, then we will finally sign a deal covering all the 100 goods and services. Right? So first deal, which will cover only 20, it is called as early harvest trade deal. Okay, now let me go forward. Let me go forward. Customs union. What is the concept of a customs union? Customs simply means duties, taxes that we impose on imports as well as exports. Point number 1. And whenever you say customs union, it simply means all the member countries in the grouping. I repeat, all the member countries in a grouping will trade amongst themselves. They will trade amongst themselves at a particular rate. For example, let's say hypothetically, RCP. In RCP, how many countries are there? In RCP, 15 countries are there. And by the way, those who will start asking me what is RCP? Regional Comprehensive Economic Partnership. RCP is nothing but Regional Economic Comprehensive Partnership. Right? So look at the term comprehensive partnership. It's an FTA. Initially, 16 members were supposed to be the members of RCP. India said, I will not join. India simply said, right, there are certain concerns, I will not join RCP. And even today, India is not a member of RCP. And please understand, RCP is an FTA, free trade agreement. Now, imagine, again I'm saying, imagine RCP becomes customs union. If RCP becomes customs union, what does it mean? These 15 member countries, whenever they will conduct a trade with any other country, I'll repeat the statement. These 15 member countries, these are members in a group. When this group, any member in the group will trade with other countries outside the group, they will have same customs. They will have same duties. In simple terms, there are 2 countries, let's say A and B, within these 15 countries. Now, if this bottle will go from India to country A is a part of RCP, B is also part of RCP. So if this bottle will go from India to A, India is a non-member of RCP. So if this bottle will go to A, whatever tariff A will impose, same tariff will be imposed by another country B, which is also part of RCP when this bottle will go to country B. All of you okay with this? Anybody has a doubt? There are members in the group. This particular group, whenever they will conduct trade with any other country which is a non-member of the group, they will have the same customs duties, right? They will treat these imports and exports in the same way with a non-member country. That is called as a customs union. Customs union. Next one is a common market. A custom union will be called as a common market. A custom union will be called as a common market when this group of countries, that is this union, will have a free movement of capital, free movement of labor, etc. That is, let's say hypothetically, if RCP becomes a customs union and then becomes a common market, what does it mean? Within RCP grouping, labor from one country can move easily into another country. Investments, capital can easily move from one country to another country. And those are asking, is there any example of a common market rather than RCP? Multiple are there. Remember one, easier one, European Union. All of you heard of European Union? Is there anybody in the classroom who says, what is this European Union? I've never heard of it. European Union is an example of a customs union. European Union is also an example of a common market. That is, within European Union, these member countries, investments can easily flow from one country to another country without any restriction. People from one country within the European Union can enter into another country easily for search of jobs. In fact, please do let me know, all of you heard of Brexit? Let me know how many of you are reading newspapers. All of you heard of Brexit? It has already happened. A couple of years ago it has happened. One of the reasons why Brexit happened was because of European Union only. That is, Brexit is a short form of Britain exiting European Union. Very simple. Britain exiting European Union. One of the concerns that they raised was within European Union, because it is a common market, people from one country within European Union can enter into another country and get the jobs. So the concern that they raised was people from other countries within EU are entering into Britain. They are taking away the jobs of Britishers. I hope you understand. They are taking away the jobs of Britishers. They are eating away our jobs. That was one of the point of contention. So I hope you understand at least now. Whenever you say common market means investments can easily flow within the member countries. Right? The people can easily move from one country to another country in search of jobs. No restrictions will be imposed. That is called as a common market. And finally, economic union. Right? So that's the irony of the situation. In common market, Britishers said people from other countries are coming to our country. Right? So look at the irony of the situation. Right? Britain government or some of the members, right, who rallied people, they said people from other countries are coming to our countries, they are eating away our revenue. Right? So that's the irony. Anyways, come to the next one. Economic union. What is this idea for economic union? A common market which will have a common currency. I repeat, a common market which will have a common currency, which will have a common parliament, which will have a common monetary policy, which will have a common fiscal policy. Such common market is called as economic union. Is it okay? I'll repeat it. What is economic union? It is a common market which will have a common currency. Right? Let me know. Have you heard of euro? Think of it. Have you heard of euro? Euro is a common currency throughout European Union. So a common market which will have a common currency, common fiscal policy, right? Common legislative, common monetary policy, etc. That market is called as right. That common market is called as economic union. Right. The best example is European Union. It is also an example of a economic union. So done. So these are the different modes of integration. India, most of the agreements that India has signed is basically free trade agreements. India is always focused on free trade agreements only. Okay, so these are different levels of integration. Now let me ask you a very simple question. All of you will agree with me if I say, if I move from preferential trade arrangement or agreement towards common market, customs union, common market, and economic union, the integration levels will increase, the complexity of the union will also increase. Let me know if anybody has a difficulty in understanding my statement. If there are two countries, let's say, they will sign PTA, they'll sign FTA, they'll become part of a customs union, then common market, then economic union. Can I simply say levels of complexity will increase? Because please understand, it is easier to simply conduct a trade. It is very easy to conduct a trade at reduced or eliminated tariff compared to having a common currency, compared to having a common monetary policy, because 2 countries, 10 countries, 15 countries sharing a common currency, sharing a common monetary policy, complications will be very high, right? So PTA is a very simplified version. Economic union is a very complex version of economic integration. Okay. Now, what has been the experience? Come to current affairs. Very recently, a lot of discussion is happening surrounding this. What has been the experience? Whenever the countries will sign trade agreements, the objective behind, the logic behind signing such trade agreements is that it should benefit all the member countries in the group. I'll repeat the statement. Whenever any country enters into a trade agreement, how many countries are there in the group? All the countries should get the benefit of the trade agreement. And what has been the experience of India? India has been signing multiple free trade agreements in the past. In the past, they have signed multiple free trade agreements. For example, Niti Aayog conducted a study evaluating what has been the performance of free trade agreement with ASEAN. ASEAN basically is a 10-member grouping. ASEAN is a 10-member grouping, Association of Southeast Nations. It's a 10-member grouping. India signed a free trade agreement with ASEAN back in 2010, which came into force, which started being implemented from 2017. And whenever you evaluated this particular trade agreement and saw or evaluated how India performed, what was the performance of India? Has India got the benefit in these trade agreements? The Niti Aayog report says India has not got the benefit. It has been the other grouping or other party in the trade agreement which has got the maximum benefit out of the trade agreements. I'll repeat the statement. As per Niti Aayog analysis, and it's a fact by the way, it has been found that whenever India has entered into such types of free trade agreements, it has been the other party which has got the maximum benefit, of the trade agreement, not India. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by maximum benefit here? Let me take a simple example and explain it to you. Imagine there are two countries, A and B. Before agreement, A is exporting, let's say, $20 billion of goods and services to B, and B is exporting $30 billion goods and services to A. Now, can I say total trade? Total trade is a $50 billion, and the trade deficit is $10 billion. Trade deficit is $10 billion. Anybody has a problem with this? Now let's imagine A and B have signed an agreement. Let's say A and B have signed an agreement, and after signing the agreement, let's say after 5 years or 10 years, you will analyze it and you will see that A's exports to B have increased to $30 billion, but B's exports to A have increased to $70 billion. Now, please tell me, what is a total trade? Total trade is $100 billion. And what is a trade deficit that A will have? This is, in fact, the situation of India. What is the total trade deficit that India will have? India will have a deficit of $40 billion. Right? In this case, A will have a deficit of $40 billion. Now look at my statement. With signing trade agreement, the overall trade has increased. Both the countries' exports have increased, but most of the benefit of the trade agreement has been accrued, has been enjoyed by country B, not by country A. Anybody has a problem with the statement? I'll repeat the statement. Listen carefully. With signing of the agreement, the trade between two countries has improved. both the countries' exports have increased. But most of the benefit of this trade agreement has gone to country B, not to country A. Done? Right? And this is exactly what has been happening in the context of India. Why it will happen, you will understand later. Have patience. Have patience. I'll tell you. Don't worry. Why does it happen? Why India is not able to leverage these benefits, you will understand in some time. Have patience. I'll tell you. But this has been the experience, and that is the precise reason why government of India wants to renegotiate, wants to review the free trade agreement with ASEAN. Correct? All of you have come across this article. Very recently, government of India has asked ASEAN that we will review this free trade agreement that we have with you. Right? We are not happy with the performance of this particular free trade agreement. India's trade deficit has widened. In fact, a Niti Aayog report says that India's trade deficit with ASEAN has doubled from $5 billion to $10 billion. In fact, it is much higher as of today, from $5 billion to $10 billion between 2011 to 2017. Meanwhile, during the same time period, overall trade has increased from $50 billion to $70 billion. Right? So this has been happening. The trade deficit has worsened. 21 sectors were covered under the trade agreement from India. In 13 of the sectors, trade deficit has actually widened. In these 13 sectors, trade deficit is actually widened. And understand this carefully. All of you will be okay if I say, when India will sign free trade agreements, imports will become cheaper now. Let me know. Anybody has a difficulty with this? When India will sign free trade agreements, imports will become cheaper. And when imports will become cheaper, can it hamper, can it affect domestic manufacturing activity? Can it impact domestic manufacturing activity? Of course, yes. FTAs have made imports much cheaper, which have affected domestic manufacturers. And in many of these FTAs that we have signed, India's trade deficit is actually widened. India's trade deficit has actually widened. Now, many of you ask me, sir, why? Why is that? Why does this happen in case of India? Now, let me give a very simple example. Think of it and do let me know. All of these concepts are not discussed in the newspaper, in the books, but you should know all of this. Yesterday, we discussed RODTEP. Correct? Let me know. Yesterday, we discussed RODTEP, remission of duties and taxes on export products. And what was the logic of RODTEP? Some of the taxes which are embedded taxes. These embedded taxes will be remitted back to the exporters so that we will achieve zero rating of exports. So if you look at only RODTEP, very simple question. If you look at only RODTEP, can I say exports competitiveness should increase? Correct? If I look at only RODTEP, export competitiveness should increase. But let me ask you a counter question now. I'll come back to this, don't worry. Right? You tell me, in the last 1 year, what has happened to repo rate? Let me see how many of you read newspapers. In the last 1 to 1.5 year, what do you think has happened to repo rate in India? Has the repo rate increased or decreased or has been kept constant? Please read newspapers. Some of you are not reading newspapers. In the last 1.5 year, repo rate has increased. Again, I'm saying overall, right? I'm not saying last 2 monetary policies or last 3 monetary policies. Overall, in the last 1.5 year, or let's say 2 years, what has happened to the repo rate? Repo rate has been increased. Right? It's a fact. You can check it. Please check it. In the last 2 years, or let's say 1.5 years, repo rate has been increased. In fact, if you check the data for repo rate from May 2022, RBI constantly kept on increasing repo rate. But in the last 6 months, RBI said, okay, let me not increase repo rate. Let me make it constant. Constant in the sense, let me keep it at the same stable level. Right? So you can simply say last couple of months it has not been changed. But it doesn't mean in the last 2 years it has not changed. So it has been increasing. Repo rate has been increasing. That's a fact. Please check the data. If I'm wrong, correct me. It has been increasing. Last 2 years, you check. Now, very simple question. If repo rate increases, please tell me, what do you think banks will do with respect to their lending rate when they give loans? Let me know. What will the banks do when they give loans? What will the banks do in terms of rate of interest? Can I simply say the rate of interest on the loans given by the banks will also increase? Correct? It will also increase. Now look at this very carefully. And this was there very recently in the newspapers. On one side, repo rate has increased. Hence, the banks also have increased. Banks also have increased rate of interest on the loans which they have given to manufacturers, to exporters. Now, if the rate of interest on the loans will increase, what do you think will happen to market prices? Think of it. What do you think will happen to market prices? Don't you think market price will also start increasing? Because you're taking a loan, you're manufacturing, automatically it will increase market price. So now let me know, can this increased repo rate by RBI, can it reduce competitiveness which has been provided by RODTP scheme? Please think logically. And UPSC suddenly can ask you this kind of question. Don't get confused. Don't get confused. Can I say with increased repo rate, market prices have increased and that has reduced or nullified. The benefit RODTP used to provide in promotion of export competitiveness. Can this happen? It is happening, in fact. It is happening. That is the reason manufacturers, exporters are asking Government of India, can you increase the benefit under RODTP? Can you simply increase the benefit under RODTP? They are demanding it. Why? In the last 2 years, repo rate has gone up, lending rates have gone up, and on the other side, government is giving RODTP benefit. So on one side, RODTP will reduce the price, and on the other side, higher interest rates will increase the price. That is a concern. Is the logic okay with all of you? Please do let me know if anybody has a problem with this. Suddenly UPSC can ask you this in statement 1, statement 2. Statement 1 and statement 2. These kind of statements can be given. You don't get confused. Yes, there is a connection between both of them. Okay. Now, what are the issues faced by Indian exporters? Why is that India is not able to get the benefit of these kind of trade agreements? Why is that always we end up having trade deficit? We don't enjoy benefits. Other countries, other trading partners will enjoy benefits. These are some of the reasons. Point number 1, cost of logistics in India is higher. Right, compared to other countries. Although you might simply say, but sir, the recent report says it is 7.8% to 8.9%. Even that, if you compare it to USA, if you compare it to China, generally the developed countries have a cost of logistics in the range of 6% to 7%. In case of India, until very recently, Government of India also accepted that cost of logistics is 13 to 14%. Cost of logistics is 13 to 14%. Right? So argument is very simple. Cost of logistics in India is higher. And some of you will ask me, what is the connection? Cost of logistics higher, it will add to market prices, export competitiveness will come down. Higher interest rate in domestic market compared to other countries. In case of India, whenever loans are given, interest rates are comparatively higher. And it should not be very difficult. If interest rates are higher in India, it will add to manufacturing cost. Market price would be higher. And those who are saying, right, sir, but interest rates, you're talking about interest rates of that is repo rate in last 1.5 year, but ASEAN was signed. My dear, traditionally interest rates in India have been higher compared to interest rates in USA. interest rates in China, etc. If you don't trust me, check it online. Check it online. Right? Please check it online. You will realize that interest rates in India have been higher, and it should be logically making sense to you. Why? Compared to a developed country, please think of it. Compared to a developed country, in developing country, don't you think there will be a very high mismatch between supply and demand of money? I'll repeat the statement. Compared to a developed country, in a developing country, don't you think, because it's a developing country, don't ask me why, developing country, there will be a huge demand for money compared to supply. Obviously, interest rates will be higher. You don't trust me? Go to Google, check what is the federal funds rate in USA and check what is the repo rate in India. Check it, you will realize it. Right? What is interest rates, general interest rates in USA? What are the general interest rates in India? And even if now you have a doubt, you remember the concept of masala bonds? Let me know. Do you remember the concept of masala bonds? Right? Tell me, in masala bonds, will we not go to USA, European market, etc., offer higher interest rates in those countries? Correct? You will offer higher interest rates in those countries. Right? So argument is very simple. Right? So in the context of all of this, again, you don't have to remember all of this. Argument is that in the context of countries, generally those countries which are developing, demand for money will be higher, and because the demand for money is higher, the interest rates in these countries will also be higher. And those who are asking, sir, what is the federal funds rate, right? What is the federal funds rate, etc.? Federal funds rates, right? It basically represents the rate of interest that is applicable in USA, right? Because federal, you always talk federal in terms of USA. Okay, so federal funds rate is the rate of interest that is applicable when Federal Reserve will give loans in USA, whereas a repo rate is the rate of interest where RBI will give a loan in India. So you will realize that their rate of interest is slightly lower compared to India's rate of interest. Okay, so higher interest rate is also a problem for Indian manufacturers compared to other countries. Trade barriers are also increasing. Please understand this very carefully. Whenever we sign trade agreements, we generally focus on tariff barriers. I'll repeat the statement. Whenever we sign trade agreements, we focus on the tariff barriers. Now imagine India and ASEAN will sign FTA, but over a period of time, ASEAN will keep on increasing non-tariff barriers. All of you okay with this? ASEAN will increase non-tariff barriers. Now you tell me, if ASEAN will erect or increase non-tariff barriers, don't you think automatically India's exports to ASEAN would be affected? You are expecting huge amount of exports, but because of non-tariff barriers, you may not achieve so much volume or value of exports. Right? So trade barriers such as non-tariff barriers have been increased in trading partners. Global slowdown as well as inflation in the Western markets are also affecting India's exports. How global slowdown will affect India's exports? My dear, imagine you want to export to a country with whom we have a trade agreement or no trade agreement. If this country will fall into recession, very simple question. If this country will fall into recession or this country experiences a slowdown, etc., automatically exports from India would be affected. It's a very logical outcome. Automatically, India's exports would get affected. Right? So higher inflation also will reduce the consumption demand. India's exports would be reduced. So global slowdown as well as inflation in the Western markets are also affecting India's exports to either trading partners as well as non-trading partners. So all of you okay? Right? All of you okay in understanding why India's exports are suffering? Why we are not able to export to the extent of our estimates? Now, apart from this, another very important concept. Whenever you sign a free trade agreement, automatically doesn't mean FTA will become successful. I'll repeat the statement. Whenever you sign a free trade agreement, automatically doesn't mean the agreement will become successful. there are various factors which will influence whether the agreement will come successful or not. What are those factors? Slightly technical, please listen to me very carefully. Competitiveness of the sector that is covered in this agreement. How competitive is a sector which is covered in this agreement? For example, you people please tell me, if India will sign a free trade agreement with USA, and one of the sectors that is covered is electric vehicles, will India end up exporting or importing electric vehicles? Let me see how many of you are reading newspapers. Let me see how many of you are reading newspapers. If India will enter into an agreement with USA, and one of the sectors that is covered is, right, electric vehicles, do you think India will end up exporting electric cars to USA? If you think that we will export cars to USA, my dear, you are worried. You are reading it wrongly. We will end up importing them, because understand this, our products are not very competitive right now. Right? Our products are not very competitive. Right? The reason is very simple. Reason is we are import dependent on lithium. You might manufacture other components, but lithium, to manufacture the cells, the batteries, you require lithium. And lithium, 100% of it, we are import dependent. So we do not have competitiveness in, let's say, four-wheeler electric vehicles right now to compete with US market, or let's say Chinese market or Japanese market. Over a period of time, we might achieve competitiveness. I'll give you one more example. Let's say drone manufacturing. Drone manufacturing, don't you think other countries, in terms of drone manufacturing, they are far ahead of us compared to what we are doing in India today? All of you will agree. And I'm not saying we are not doing anything. Please understand my point also. Don't say, sir, you are anti-India, you are accusing Indian government, etc. I'm not saying that. I'm saying other countries are ahead of us. Right? We are also doing that. We are promoting drone manufacture under PLI, production linked incentives. But other countries are slightly ahead of us. Now, if I enter into a trade agreement and drone manufacture is covered, we will end up importing all of it. Right? Because they'll become cheaper then. So I hope you understand. I hope you understand how competitive is the sector. How competitive is the sector which is covered under, right, let's say, the trade agreement. And that is the reason, I hope you are reading the newspapers. That's the reason, generally, whenever we are signing trade agreements, Government of India will try to keep agriculture sector products out of it. Have you observed it? I'll tell you the reason also. And if you think it's not very difficult, if you think, you'll realize it. Government of India will try to keep agriculture sector or products related to agriculture sector out of the trade agreement. Why? It's very sensitive. It's a very sensitive subject for a trade for us. Lot of population in India, around 49% of working population is working in agriculture sector. And lot of this working population is right, basically lot of times earning very little income. And in that particular situation, if you involve agriculture with a in a trade agreement with, let's say, Australia, in a trade agreement with, let's say, ASEAN countries, in a trade agreement with, let's say, USA, you might end up importing a lot of these commodities, and you can't do anything at that point of time. You cannot do anything. Why? You have signed a trade agreement. You cannot impose tariff barriers. You will allow them to come to India, and then farmers in India will start suffering because of it. Right? So that is the reason there are certain sectors which are not competitive, which are very sensitive. Government will try to keep it away. Removal of non-tariff barriers. Tariff barriers are generally removed. If non-tariff barriers are not removed, if non-tariff barriers are increased otherwise, then the trade agreement may not yield expected results. Income of the countries with which agreement is signed. Let me ask you a very simple question. Which one would you prefer? India signing free trade agreement. India signing a free trade agreement with USA, or India signing a free trade agreement with, let's say, very poor country. Very, very poor country. Again, I don't want to take the names, right? Let's say African countries, very poor country. Please do let me know. Which one would you prefer? India signing a free trade agreement with USA, or a very poor country in the world? You should prefer the first one. You should prefer the first one. Many of you will simply say, sir, right? A very poor country, I can export more, I can earn more. My dear, the income of this country is very limited. Income of this country is very, very limited. How much can you export? Think of it. How much can you export? Don't you think there's a limitation on it? But imagine you get tariff free access. Tariff, that is, let's say 0% customs duty are going to be imposed on most of your exports to USA. Can you imagine the potential of India's exports to a largest economy such as USA? I hope you understand the potential of exports. How much can you export to a largest economy such as USA, which has the largest consumption market in the world? Right? Potential will be very, very high. That is the reason, if a question is asked, write this as a recommendation. Write this as a recommendation. India is negotiating and signing free trade agreements, but it should sign more of these free trade agreements with larger countries with whom we have trade surplus, such as USA. Is it okay? India should enter into more such trade agreements. We are negotiating, by the way. We are negotiating trade agreement with USA. India should sign more of these trade agreements with those countries with whom we have trade surplus. And what is the outcome? What is the objective of this statement? Without a trade agreement, you have a trade surplus. Now imagine you will enter into a trade agreement. Don't you think the trade surplus will further expand in favor of India? All of you able to understand this? Without trade agreement, already we have a trade surplus. And if I enter into a trade agreement, is there a potential that our trade surplus with that country will further expand, which will provide benefit to us? That is the argument. That is the way forward point you will have to mention if at all a question is asked regarding export competitiveness or exports from India. The relaxation provided under the trade agreement and MFN for other countries. What is the difference in the rate? What is the difference in the tariff rate? That is relaxations provided under the trade agreement and MFN for other countries. Now let me explain this. Slightly technical. Please listen carefully. Imagine A is conducting trade with B as well as C. Is conducting trade with B and C. Two countries are their trading partners. Or let's take one more country, D. Now imagine right now, all the three countries, B, C as well as D are trading partners, and the MFN rate, most favored nation, when this bottle will go from A to, when this bottle will come from C to A, B to A and D to A, let's say most favored nation rate is 2%. Most favored nation rate is 2%, which means if this bottle will be imported from country C, tariff will be 2%. From B, 2%. And from D, it will be 2%. Now, let's say you enter into trade agreement with D. Country D. And because you have signed a free trade agreement with country D, now rather than 2%, it will be reduced to, let's say, 0%. Rather than 2%, it will come down to 0%. Now, please think of it logically. Please think of it. If country C is China and country D is, let's say, any other country with whom we have a trade agreement, don't you think even though on Chinese products we are applying 2%, 0% tariff, China anyways will have a higher competitiveness and its imports into India will continue rather than importing more from country D in this example? Let me know. Anybody has a problem? I'll repeat it again. India has signed a trade agreement, let's say with country D, and MFN rate is 2% on this bottle, and I'm assuming this one of the countries is China. And when I say China, all of you will agree Chinese products are always very cheaper. Anybody has a problem with this statement? Chinese products are already very cheaper compared to the product which is being exported from country D. Now, because I've signed a free trade agreement with country D, what I'll do is I will eliminate the tariff. That is, rather than 2%, it will become 0%. But even now, because this is China, can I simply say the products are very competitive, very cheaper, even if I sign a trade agreement with country D here, which means although I'm giving a benefit of 0% tariff on country D's bottle, its exports to India will not change by much. Its exports will not change. Why? Even now, Chinese products are cheaper. Anybody has a problem? Now look at the statement. Please look at the last statement. The relaxation provided under the free trade agreement and MFN rates for other countries. How much is that difference? That difference will also make a lot of impact on the trade agreement. Okay, so these are some of the factors on which whether the FTA becomes a successful or not successful will be dependent. Okay, can we go forward? Can we go forward now? All of you okay? Why India's exports are suffering, or why India's exports to other countries are not increasing by much? When we sign the free trade agreement, even then, why other countries are getting benefit, why we are not getting benefit, etc. Any question? Please do let me know. Sir, why don't India impose retaliatory tariff on countries that impose trade barriers to India's export? Please understand. Whenever they will impose these kind of non-tariff barrier, non-tariff barrier, they might simply say national security is a concern for me. They might simply say national security is a concern. And in the garb of national security, if they impose these kind of non-tariff barriers, it's very, very difficult. It's very difficult for you to retaliate against them. For example, have you heard of even government of India trying to impose certain non-tariff barriers and say national security? Let me see. Right, government of India using certain non-tariff barriers to control imports coming into India and say national security issue, inflation issue, etc. Yes, we also do that, by the way. We also do it, by the way. Right? Again, every country will do it. Every country does it. Why? National interest overrides trade. Always remember this. National interest will override trade agreements. Right? Our national interest is very important for us. Trade we can enter, right? Trade agreement we can review, we can change, etc. National interest is more important. Okay. TP, right? Yesterday we have discussed this. Let me go to the second one. PLI. PLI. What is PLI? Production linked incentive. PLI simply means production linked incentive. Very famous now, very often cited in the newspaper. Listen very carefully. What is this concept of production linked incentive? Government of India, in order to reduce import dependence. One, to reduce import dependence. Second, to promote investments in India, to promote investments. Third, to promote exports, because of PLI we are also promoting exports now. Example is smartphones. Okay, so to reduce import dependence, to promote investment, to promote manufacturing, to promote exports, to promote employment, etc., has implemented a scheme by the name of production linked incentive. PLI, production linked incentive. Now, in the production linked incentive, initially to begin with, only three sectors or industries were covered. Today, more than 10, in fact, 14 industries are covered. Now, many of you will ask me, sir, should I remember all the 14? No, try to remember important ones. For example, drone, it is covered. Battery cell manufacturing, it is covered, right? So smartphone manufacturing, it is also covered. So 2 or 3 are more than sufficient. So initially we began with only 3 industries. Today it has been expanded to cover 14 industries. Now under the production linked incentive, what government does is, government will give certain specifications. Government will give certain conditions in terms of the total sales incurred by the company. How much is the total sales done by the company? Total investment done in a particular year, etc. So if a company which is covered under the PLI, which is a beneficiary of a PLI, meets these conditions, it's very important. A company which is covered under PLI, it is a beneficiary covered under PLI, should meet these conditions. Conditions such as investment. Annually, they're supposed to make certain investment. Sales. Annually, they're supposed to conduct a certain amount of value of sales. If such conditions are met, only then government will provide certain subsidies, certain incentives to these manufacturers. All of you okay with this? All of you okay? Anybody has a problem, please do let me know. And those are asking, sir, how much production should be done? How much sales should be done? My dear, there are 14 sectors. I hope you understand. There are 14 industries. From one industry to another industry, the threshold, the targets will change. You don't need to remember all these targets for 14 sectors. It's very complicated to remember it. So do not worry. Simply remember point here. What is the point? Government wants you to invest certain amount of money every year. You should invest. No option. Second, government also wants you to achieve certain value of sales every year. If you achieve these targets, only and only then government will provide incentives to you. This scheme is called as a production linked incentive. Production linked incentive. Under the scheme, and the beauty of the scheme, please remember this. The beauty of the scheme is, do you remember duty credit scrip yesterday that we have discussed? Let me see how many of you remember this. Under RODTEP, MEIS, SCIS, etc., we discussed the concept of duty credit scrip. What is a duty credit scrip? The incentive that you're supposed to receive. The incentive that you're supposed to receive under all these schemes will be given in the form of a certificate. It is a certificate. And what is the use of the certificate? You can use this value of the certificate to pay for customs duties. And if you do not have any use of it, transfer it to somebody else and get the money. The beauty of production linked incentive is that government says, I will not issue scripts to you. Rather, I will give money. I will not use the script. Rather, I will give the money to you. That is based on the targets that have been given. Based on the targets that have been given, if you achieve the targets, then I'll give money to you. I will transfer money into your account. That is production linked incentive. So under the scheme, cash incentives are provided based on parameters such as incremental sales, investment, etc. The incentives will vary from one sector to another sector, and PLI was launched covering only 3 industries. Today, it has been expanded to cover 14 industries. It has been expanded to cover 14 industries. So these are certain basic points associated with PLI, production linked incentive. Anybody has a doubt in any of the points, please do let me know. Otherwise, I'll tell you certain current affairs regarding PLI. So isn't PLI challenged at WTO? My dear, right now, please understand this. Government is very clear with this. Government says the incentives that are given is dependent on sales that you do. Incentives that is given is dependent on how much sales, excess, incremental. Incremental means what? Additional sales that you do. The government is not fixing incentives based on your exports. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. Government is not giving subsidy connected to your export. No, whatever sales you do, how much ever you sell, all of that will be covered under PLI. If you target only exports, then definitely yes, this will become a contentious issue with other member countries. But you are not connecting it to exports. I hope you understand. Whatever is the total sales of the company, that will be the value covered under PLI. Done? Right? So can we go forward? Can we go forward? So that is the concept of PLI. Now what has been the evaluation part? What has been the impact of it? Point number 1, before I start, always remember this. PLI started very, very recently, couple of years ago. It has been expanded also very recently. Point number 1 is, always remember this. You cannot evaluate the complete effectiveness of a scheme in a short time period. Please remember that also. You cannot evaluate the effectiveness of a scheme in a very short duration. Because many of the sectors are being covered in the last 1 year. So when you see that many of the sectors are covered in the last 1 year, 1.5 year, you cannot measure the long-term impact of such a scheme. You cannot measure the long-term impact of such a scheme itself. Okay, so point number one is that please remember, right? But apart from that particular, let's say, caution hashtag, what has been the impact? Definitely yes, under PLI, India has been able to attract a lot of investment. India has been able to attract a lot of investment. The best example is mobile manufacturing. Mobile manufacturing, the success story of mobile manufacturing. What is the mobile manufacturing? Before PLI, the government data shows we used to import a lot of smartphones into India. Before PLI, we used to import a lot of smartphones into India. But after PLI has been announced by the government, many foreign companies have opened manufacturing units in India. The best example for that is Samsung. The best example is Samsung. Even Apple has opened manufacturing in India. So government of India now says, because of PLI, we have not only reduced imports, of mobile phones, we are exporting mobile phones now. Right? Because of PLI, we are not only reducing the imports, we are exporting the mobile phones to the external market. So one, import dependence has come down. Second one, investment in India. We have attracted investments in India. So that is also good. It has led to capital formation. It has led to employment generation. It has added to exports also. So these are some of the factors in support of production linked incentive, in support of PLI. But having said so, are there any concerns? Are there any concerns regarding PLI? That is also very important. Various experts have criticized PLI and said PLI has not promoted manufacturing in India. PLI has promoted assembling in India. Understand this very carefully. PLI has not promoted manufacturing. PLI has promoted assembling in India. Right now, many of you will ask me, sir, what is manufacturing? What is assembling? Please let me know. Can everybody see the bottle in my hand? Anybody in the classroom who says, sir, no, bottle is not visible? Let me know. Can everybody see the bottle? Right? Yes. Thanks a lot. Now, 2 points. One, manufacturing in India. Meaning what? You will manufacture the whole product in India. You will manufacture bottle cap. You will manufacture the bottom part. And you will sell the product in India. What is assembling? What is assembling? You will import this. You will import this. You will also import this. You will put it together and sell it as bottle in India. Now you understand the difference between manufacturing and assembling? Let me know. All of you are clear with what is manufacturing and what is assembling? Manufacturing means producing the good in India. Assembling means you will import the spare parts. You will import the right components. You will put it together. Final product is ready. You will sell it in the market. Right? So in the context of mobile phones, this has been the criticism. In the context of mobile phones, many foreign companies have simply brought in the components. Under PLI, they say they are manufacturing, but they're not manufacturing. They're simply assembling. They're simply assembling the product and selling it in India. And just to show you, right? Now let me know. Between these two parts, which one do you think is more important? Which one is more costly between these two parts? Which one is less costlier? All of you will agree? This is steel. This product, this part will be costlier. Correct? This part will be costlier. And this part is comparatively very cheap. So what these companies might do is, and this has been the situation in many of the companies, what they will do is, they will import this. They will import this, which is more important. They will import it, and just to show they are manufacturing, they will manufacture this. and they'll say, right, we are manufacturing the product in India. So they will manufacture this, they'll import it, they will assemble it, and they will sell it to you. All of you okay with this? All of you okay? So now question is, has a PLI converted India into a manufacturing center or a center for assembly? Right? Because what is preferred? What is preferred? Preferred is manufacturing. Preference will always be for manufacturing, not assembling. So there is a concern now. In fact, various experts have criticized. They have said, no. They're not manufacturing. They're simply assembling in India. They are simply assembling in India. They're not manufacturing, right? And you are simply saying, best example, sir, any example of this criticism in PLI, mobile manufacturing. And many experts looked at the data and said, look at data. If you look at the imports from China, because China is a very important market for mobile manufacturing. If you look at the data from China, that is how much we have imported, mobile imports have come down, but the components of the mobile have increased. Right? So that is a cause of concern. That's a cause of concern, which means we are importing components, not the mobile phone. We are importing components and we are assembling in India. Right? So that is the criticism. That has been the cause of concern which has been raised against the concept of production linked incentive. Okay, can we go forward now? Can we go forward? Right? So PLI, these are the things which are being discussed. Please be very careful. Next one is interest equalization scheme. Next one is interest equalization scheme. What is interest equalization scheme? Government of India says some of the loans which are taken by the manufacturers and exporters. These loans which are taken by the manufacturers and exporters, these loans generally attract a higher interest rate. That's a fact. These loans attract a higher interest rate. So what I will do is, I will reduce the burden of this higher interest rate by paying some of the interest that the manufacturer has to pay to the bank. Some of the interest I will pay. That is, the government will pay some part of the interest, so that the manufacturers, when they take a loan, interest rate burden will come down. Interest rate burden will actually come down. Meaning what? I'll take a very simple example here. Imagine I'm an exporter. I want to manufacture this bottle. You are a bank. I will take a loan from you. Let's say hypothetically 9% rate of interest. Now, because the rate of interest is higher, automatically the cost of manufacturing of the bottle will become higher. So Government of India says, in order to promote export competitiveness, out of 9%, let's say 3% will be paid by the government. Out of 9%, 3% will be paid by the government. And when government will pay 3%, I don't have to pay 9, I'll have to pay only 6%. So now the cost of production of the bottle will come down. Export competitiveness automatically will start increasing. That scheme is called as interest equalization scheme. It was introduced as a part of Foreign Trade Policy 2015 and 2020. It was supposed to end in financial year 20, but Government of India has extended this till financial year 24. It has extended this right further. Exporters would be given interest subsidy, meaning part of the interest will be paid by the government. Full interest will not be paid by the borrower. It is available for all MSME exporters. MSME means micro, small, medium enterprises. Next week we will discuss what is MSME. Please do not worry. It is available for all the MSME exporters and other exporters who are going to manufacture and export 416 identified products. Because the logic of Government of India is very simple. Not every product which is exported requires assistance. All of you okay? Not every product that is manufactured and exported requires assistance of the government. No, right? We should not give it to every product. 416 identified products have been covered under the interest equalization scheme. Under this, the banks which are giving loans to exporters at lower interest rate, and these right? The interest part of the interest is paid to them by government. This scheme is called as interest equalization scheme. Interest equalization scheme. All of you okay with this? Can I go forward now? Let me know. Can I go forward? So these are some of the schemes. Some of the schemes. Right? Again, are there any other schemes? Of course, yes. Right? Have you heard of ODOP? One district, one product. At least you should have heard of it in the yesterday's class. Right? We'll discuss that also. We'll discuss that under agriculture sector. Right? There is a scheme called as a developing districts as export hubs. We'll discuss that. Okay. In fact, I don't know how many of you have seen this. Yesterday, there was an article. Where Mr. Jai Shankar, Minister of External Affairs, Mr. Jai Shankar, as well as Mr. Piyush Goyal, Minister for Trade and Commerce, they have discussed the export potential from India. What are the concerns, etc., etc. One of the schemes that they mentioned in their speech was one district, one product. One district, one product. They mentioned that particular scheme name. Okay, so we'll discuss that also. Please don't worry. We'll discuss that also. Okay, so these are some of the schemes that have been implemented by the government in the past couple of years in order to promote export competitiveness from India. Now, whenever you discuss trade agreements, I forgot to tell you one more point. Whenever you discuss trade agreements, one of the reasons why Indian exports suffer, right, why trade deficit widens, is because of rules of origin. Please understand this, because of rules of origin. In recent current affairs, a lot of discussions happening regarding rules of origin. Let me explain what is this rules of origin. Let me explain what is this RO, rules of origin. Listen very carefully. Imagine A will sign a free trade agreement with B. A will sign a free trade agreement with B. Okay. And under the free trade agreement, this bottle is covered. This bottle is covered, which will attract a tariff rate of 0%. Which will attract a tariff rate of 0%. Now there is one more country C, which is manufacturing this bottle and exporting to A, but the tariff rate applicable is 20%. Tariff rate applicable is 20%. Now please look at the picture and do let me know, can the country C route their products via B into country A and enjoy tariff benefit? I'll repeat the statement. Please look at the picture. If C will export this bottle to A, 20% tariff is applicable. A and B have signed a free trade agreement, and under that, from B, when the bottle will go to A, 0% tariff is applicable. So my question is, can country C route the bottle? Route means from another way. Can they send the product into A, that is through B, and enjoy tariff benefit? Perfectly possible. Right? Some of you are saying no. Perfectly possible, my dear. It is possible. It happens. It happens. Right? That is a cause of concern. That is a cause of concern. That is the reason why generally whenever free trade agreements are signed, there is one provision which is called as a rules of origin. There is one provision that is insisted by countries which is called as a rules of origin, ROO. I don't know how many of you have attended the webinar couple of days ago. Today is Friday. Tuesday evening, I took the webinar. Tuesday evening, 8:30, I took the webinar. And one of the points I discussed was related to current affairs only. That is, imagine A is India, B is Bangladesh, and C is China. How is that possible? Many of you ask me, how is that possible, sir? Look at this scenario and tell me, is it possible or not? Bangladesh wants to become a member of RCEP. China is already a member of RCEP. Now, if Bangladesh enters into RCEP grouping, can this bottle enter into Bangladesh at 0% tariff? Let me know now. If Bangladesh becomes a member of RCEP, can this bottle from China enter into Bangladesh at 0% tariff? And from there, can it be sent to India at 0% tariff? Even now, anybody has difficulty in understanding this, right? This can be done. This can be done multiple times. It happens. It happens. Right? Why? RCP. ASEAN is member of RCEP. China is a member of RCEP. So can they route? And ASEAN has a trade agreement with India. So can they route their products to third country like this into India? Of course, yes, they do it. So how it can be addressed? What can be done in that case? There is a concept called as a rules of origin. Under rules of origin, whenever product will enter into India through Bangladesh, let's say the product will enter into India, the exporter has to prove how much value addition has happened in Bangladesh. Is it okay? I'll repeat the statement. The exporter has to get a certificate which will show how much value addition on the product has been done in Bangladesh. And if government of India feels that, okay, only 10% value addition has been done, only 15% value addition, less than 30% value addition, then I will not provide 0% tariff benefit to this bottle. I will treat it like a product from any other country and apply MFN rate of 20%. Is it okay? All of you okay with this? India will simply say only 10% value addition on the bottle. No, I will not accept it. Why? Generally, whenever such agreements are signed and there are rules of origin provision, countries will insist at least 40% value addition. Countries will insist at least 40% value addition from a country which is exporting it. And if Bangladesh will say, my value addition is only 10%, does it not mean 90% value of the bottle was generated in China? Let me know. Does it not mean 90% of the value of the bottle was added in China? So I'll simply say, I will not give tariff benefit to you. I will impose 20% MFN rate on this bottle. This is called as a rules of origin. Government of India is insisting on very strict rules of origin now. Done. So this is also one more point. And if at all UPSC is going to ask you way forward, etc., mention this. Please mention this. Say that Government of India should insist on very strict rules of origin in the free trade agreements in order to reduce potential misuse of the agreements. Okay, so these are certain important points I wanted to discuss regarding the concept of international trade. Any doubts, please do let me know. The chapter is over. Questions are there. We'll discuss the questions later. I'll take up the next chapter. Any questions regarding what I've discussed, please do let me know. IES could be challenged at WTO. My dear, we are not covering all the products which are competitive enough. All the products which are competitive enough, no, we are not providing incentives to them. That is the point number one. Point number two, we are not giving subsidies based on the value of the product. No, we are simply providing interest. We are not connecting the interest or the subsidy or the incentives here to the value of the product. Export linked subsidy. You will have to remember that. We are not giving export linked subsidy. We are simply paying part of the interest. How much is the value of your export? Doesn't matter. I am connecting it to your rate of interest. Okay. What is IES? Under interest equalization scheme, if an exporter will take a loan, part of the loan's interest rate, I repeat, part of the interest rate will be paid by government. That is interest equalization scheme. Now let me go to the next one. Right? Let me go to the next one. Next chapter that I'll be discussing is subsidy. Very important, very important. And before I go forward, subsidies as a chapter, I have not seen this being given separately anywhere. Any book, either NCERT, Tamil Nadu board, right, or even any expert book, etc., they have not given a separate chapter on it. They would by default cover the concept of subsidies in different chapters. For example, they are talking about industries. They would have given certain points regarding subsidies there. What kind of subsidy schemes are there? They are talking about agriculture. In agriculture sector, they will write about certain subsidy schemes. They're talking about international trade. They will write about subsidy schemes there. But as far as I'm concerned, for UPSC exams, you should know the concept of subsidy very carefully, because questions have been asked mainly in the mains. They have been asked, right? The questions have been asked mainly in the mains examination. Prelims, specifically, they have not targeted subsidies as a separate chapter, but agriculture, because there's so much of overlap, right? Think of it. All of you heard of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana in the last 3 months? Let me know. All of you heard of Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana? If you see, Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana is a subsidy. It's a subsidy. So questions can be asked on food subsidy. Questions have been asked on MSP. MSP is also subsidy. So there is lot of overlap. And so do not say, sir, no questions on subsidies. Why, etc. If you come across questions in agriculture sector such as MSP, right, WTO subsidies, etc., all of them are basically coming under subsidies only. Okay. So with that caveat, what are we going to cover? This is a list of the topics. Please have a look at it. Now let me start the discussion. Listen very carefully. Subsidy is a benefit. Subsidy is a benefit paid by the government, given by the government. Rather than saying paid, use the term given. Subsidy is a benefit that is given by the government either in the form of a cash or non-cash. I'll give you examples, have patience. Subsidy is a benefit given by the government to either an individual, to a house, to a company, etc., either in the form of a cash or non-cash. Now, what do you mean by subsidy given in the form of a cash or non-cash? Let me give you a very simple example. Imagine government of India, right? Imagine, not even imagine, I'll take an example only. All of you heard of PM Kisan scheme? Let me know. All of you heard of PM Kisan scheme, Pradhan Mantri Kisan Samman Nidhi. Under PM Kisan scheme, Government of India will provide income support of 6,000 rupees to certain farmers. Government will provide income support of 6,000 rupees to certain farmers. Now, can I say this is a cash subsidy? Let me know. Please participate. Can I say this is a cash subsidy? On the other side, Government of India will give you 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. Can I say this is a non-cash subsidy? All of you okay? On the other side, Government of India will give you 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. Can I say this is a non-cash subsidy? So understand the logic here. Always remember this. Subsidies can be given in the form of cash or non-cash also. Subsidies can be in the form of non-cash benefit also. So who will get the subsidy? The beneficiary can be me, can be you, individuals, can be a household, can be a company also. So this is basically called as a subsidy. Now government, why does it give subsidy? Why does the government provide subsidy? Reasons are very simple. One, government wants to provide certain benefits to poor people. All of you agree? The government wants to provide social welfare to poor people. Otherwise, think of it, if 5 kgs of food grain free of a cost are not given, 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost are not given, don't you think a poor household may not be able to afford the market price for the food grains? So it is to provide social welfare. It is to promote consumption of certain better inputs. Government wants you to consume certain better inputs. For example, please do let me know. All of you heard of Ujjwala scheme? You should have heard of it. At least this one you should not have any doubt. I'll tell you the context also. Very recently, Prime Minister visited house of one of the beneficiaries under Ujjwala. Correct? Hindu also reported this. Right? So you cannot simply say, sir, I've never come across this. Right? Prime Minister went to the house, had a cup of tea and came back, and it was there in the news. Everywhere it was there in the news. What is Ujjwala scheme? Under this, subsidies are provided to identified households for LPG connections. For LPG connections, LPG connections. So now do let me know, don't you think Government of India wants the households to consume LPG so that they are not burning wood? They are not burning firewood, because if they burn firewood, pollution will be higher, respiratory diseases can be caused. In fact, Prime Minister also quoted this, right? I hope you are reading newspapers. In fact, PM also stated the same thing, right? Because of firewood burning, indoor pollution would be higher. You will inhale it, and respiratory diseases can be caused. So that is the logic. That is the logic. So government wants to promote consumption of better inputs. Can we apply the same logic even to the FAME scheme? Think of it. Can we apply the same logic even to the FAME scheme? Government wants consumers to purchase and use electric vehicles. Government wants you to consume. Consume literally doesn't mean eat. I hope you understand. Don't say, sir, I don't consume electric vehicle. I consume rice and dal. Don't say that. Consumption is a very common term. Right? So the government wants you to consume electric vehicles. So government will give you subsidies under FAME. So government wants higher production. Government wants you to use better inputs for consumption, achieve social objective. Government wants to keep control over the prices. Otherwise, the product's price in the market could be very, very high. Lot of population will not be able to afford it. It will become very costly. And finally, government wants to promote exports as well. Government wants to promote exports as well. So these are some of the reasons why government provides the subsidies. Now, having said so, what are the concerns? What are the concerns regarding the subsidy policy? Point number one, lot of these schemes either announced by the center or announced by the state, they do not target beneficiaries. These are universal in nature. Now you'll ask me, sir, what do you mean by target and what do you mean by universal? Right? I'll come back to this slide. Don't worry. Please look at this classification. Please look at the classification. Whenever you talk about subsidies, one classification is universal subsidies and targeted subsidies. Universal and targeted. What is universal? What is targeted? Let me give a very simple example. If all the houses in India, obviously they will purchase LPG. If all the houses in India are given LPG subsidy, can I say it is a universal subsidy? Think of it. Earlier, this used to happen. If all the households, whoever will purchase LPG, if they are given LPG subsidy, can I say that's a universal subsidy? Of course, yes. That's a universal subsidy. But think of it logically. Should you provide universal subsidies? Should you be providing universal subsidies? Answer is simply no. Sir, any example of a universal subsidy? Right? In many states, will they not announce electricity for households free of a cost? Correct? Electricity for households up to 500 units free of a cost. Now think logically. Should you provide these kind of subsidies for everyone? Don't you think a better approach will be identify who requires assistance, provide assistance only to those. Identify who requires assistance and provide assistance only to those. So universal subsidies will lead to higher expenditure. Universal subsidies will always lead to higher expenses. And in the process of providing universal subsidies, you will provide subsidies to all the people or to even those people who do not require assistance, who absolutely do not require any assistance. So in case of India, at the state level, at the central level, there are many subsidies which are universal. You need to cut it out. You need to reduce them. Go for targeted subsidies. Now you will ask me, sir, what do you mean by targeted subsidies? Ujjwala Yojana. I'll take the same example. Ujjwala Yojana. Right? Please do let me know. Ujjwala Yojana. Under the Ujjwala Yojana, do you think government is providing LPG subsidies? The connection, subsidies for LPG connection to all households in India. Think of it. Do you think government of India is providing the subsidies for LPG connection for all households? Absolutely no. They will identify poor households. They will identify poor households. And those who are going to ask me, sir, how they will identify poor households, etc. There's a categorization called as a BPL, below poverty line. The below poverty line households are given cards, etc., etc. They will identify those households and provide subsidies for LPG connection. I'll give you one more example. Current affairs. One more example. The idea of National Food Security Act or Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana. 5 kgs of free food grains are given. Is it given for everyone? You tell me. It should not be very difficult for you, right? Is this particular 5 kg of food grains, free food grains, 0 rupee food grains, is it given to everyone in India? Mr. Mukesh Ambani will get 5 kgs of free food grains. I will get 5 kgs of free food grains. Absolutely no. Absolutely no. Government of India clearly says around 67% of India's population, around 67%, that is 2/3 of India's population, will be covered under the food security. Because we feel, that is, Government of India says, we feel they do not have sufficient food security, will provide assistance to them. Before that, in fact, it was universal. Before many decades, it was a universal subsidy. Even food subsidies were universal. But post 1992, we have made it as a targeted subsidy. Targeted means we'll identify the beneficiaries and only to those beneficiaries we will provide the subsidies. So universal and targeted. Now, based on this, all of you will agree with me, rather than having targeted subsidies. Correct? Rather than having universal subsidies, we should have targeted subsidies. So one, we need to target. We need to effectively target subsidies. Okay. Second one, it doesn't allow for optimal utilization of resources. Right? The idea of the subsidy is it doesn't allow for optimal utilization of resources. Now, what is optimal utilization of resources? Let me explain one point here. Listen very carefully. All of you heard of minimum support price? You might not have read about it, but I'll tell it now. Don't worry. All of you heard of at least minimum support price. I'll explain it right now. Please listen carefully. Minimum support price is nothing but MSP. Right? What is MSP? MSP is announced by the government. It is announced by the government. MSP is the price which will be paid by the government when they will purchase food grain from the farmer. Very simple. What is minimum support price? It is the price that will be paid by the government whenever they will purchase the food grain from the farmers. That is called as MSP. Now, I'll give a very simple example. You tell me, there is crop A which will have a MSP of, let's say, 1,500 rupees, and crop B which will have a MSP of, let's say, 3,000 rupees. Very simple question to all of you. A farmer will cultivate crop A or crop B? You think of it. A farmer will cultivate crop A or crop B? Right? Some of you are confused. Very simple question. Here also you are confused. Obviously, farmer will cultivate more of crop B. Why? Because the MSP is higher. The returns that the farmer will earn on crop B will be higher compared to crop A. All of you okay with this? All of you okay? Because the MSP for crop B is higher, the returns that the farmer will earn will be higher in crop B. Cultivate more of crop B. Now, please tell me, if you keep on cultivating more of crop B, will there be a mismatch between supply of A and supply of B in the market? Correct? If crop B consumes a lot of water, crop B requires a lot of water, what will happen to water table? Availability of ground level, underground water, the table will start declining. If you announce free electricity, in the state for agriculture sector, then what will happen to consumption of electricity for pumping water? Consumption of electricity will also be very, very high. So now, based on this, you tell me, is it not leading to misallocation of resources? Is it not leading to inefficient utilization of resources in the economy? Anybody has a doubt even now? Anybody has a doubt? it will create lot of inefficiencies, inefficient utilization of resources, and even volatility will be created in the market. Volatility. In fact, I don't know how many of you read Indian Express. Next week I'll give you this article. In Indian Express, yesterday there was a very nice article about MSP. In Indian Express, headline, there was a very nice article about MSP itself. Various ministries under government of India have raised concerns regarding MSP policy. They have raised concerns regarding MSP policy. Why? You think of this logic and do let me know. If a crop will attract higher MSP, if a crop is announced with a higher MSP, farmer will cultivate more and more of the same crop. Don't you think production of other crops will come down? Crop diversification will come down. If A is, I'll take a very simple example to prove my point. If A is oilseed, and B is wheat, if A is oilseed and B is wheat, don't you think cultivation of wheat will be very high, cultivation of oilseed will be very low? So now think of it, government wants to promote production of oilseeds in India. Government wants to promote production of oilseeds in India, but because the returns on the oilseed is lower, for the farmer, the returns on the oilseed is lower, production will not increase. And as a result of this, even today, we keep on importing oilseeds into India. All of you are able to connect the dots here? Government wants to promote production of oilseeds. Why? We import a lot of oilseed. On the other side, wheat we export. We export wheat to the international market. So we have sufficient production in India of wheat, but not of oilseeds. So we import oilseed. Government wants you to produce more oilseed. But let's say even if they increase the MSP of oilseed from 1500 to let's say 1800, for 1500 to 1800, and let's say I'll give you an elaborated example here. Listen very carefully. They will increase oilseed MSP from 15 to 1800 and MSP for wheat from 3000 to let's say 3100. What if the returns in case of B even today is higher compared to A? What if the returns in case of B is higher even today compared to A? Even then farmer will cultivate B only. Is it okay? Right? Even then the farmer will cultivate B, because again, understand this, some of you are saying the rate, etc., etc. My dear, I'm saying returns. Do you understand the term returns here? If you invest 100 and if you get 50% is your returns. I'll repeat the statement. Listen to me very carefully. If you invest 100 for cultivation and government will purchase it at 150, can I say your returns is 50%? Anybody has a problem with my statement now? At least now? If you invest 100 and government will purchase it at 150, your returns is 50%. So government of India says returns in case of wheat is much higher, 150%, 200% compared to oil seeds where the returns are much lower. So farmer will look at it and say returns in wheat is more for me, so I will cultivate more of it. So despite increasing MSP, look at the ineffectiveness of the policy. Please look at it. Despite increasing the MSP for oil seeds, Government of India now says we are not able to see increased production. And because the production is not increasing, even today, I am import dependent on it. Right? So I hope you understand. How policies, how subsidies can lead to inefficient utilization of resources, distortion, right? Inefficiency can be created in the market, etc. Can I go forward now? All of you okay? Can I go forward? Now, what is the classification of subsidies? How do we classify subsidies? Let's go one by one. First classification is a direct and indirect. What is a direct subsidy? Direct subsidies involve actual cash payment to the beneficiary. Cash payment is done to the beneficiary. Right? Now, please understand what is this direct subsidy. I'll take a current affairs example. All of you have heard of direct benefit transfer in LPG. Let me know. DBTL, direct benefit transfer in LPG. DBTL is a very famous scheme which is being implemented by the central government. Now, what is this direct subsidy? What is this direct subsidy? What is this indirect subsidy? Please understand, either it is direct or indirect, government will pay money. I'll repeat my statement. Listen very carefully, because when I discuss implicit and explicit, all of you will start raising this question. Listen carefully now. Whether this is a direct or indirect, money is paid by the government. But the difference between direct and indirect is, whenever you say direct subsidy, government will pay the subsidy to the beneficiary. Government transfers the subsidy to the beneficiary. Whereas indirect means government will transfer the subsidy amount to the supplier. Is the logic okay? I'll show you examples, but do let me know, is the logic okay? Difference between direct and indirect is okay with you? Direct means government will give the benefit, that is subsidy, to the beneficiary, consumer. Whereas indirect means government will give the benefit, that is the subsidy amount is given to the supplier. Sir, any example? Let me show it to you. Let me show it to you. In case of indirect, earlier we used to have indirect subsidies in LPG. Here is a distributor. Distributor will supply the cylinder to the customer. At step number 1, I'll write number so that you understand. Customer will book the cylinder. Cylinder will be sold. I'll take a number, the rupees, so that you understand. Let's say 900 rupees. Actual cost of the cylinder is 900. So the distributor will supply the cylinder at 600 rupees to the customer. Government will provide 300 rupees subsidy to the distributor, that is seller. Now, is it okay if I say, in this example, government is giving the subsidy amount not to the beneficiary, but to the seller in the market. In essence, government is ensuring the consumer is able to get the good or a service at subsidized price. Anybody has a problem? Indirect, I'll repeat it. In indirect, government is ensuring the beneficiary is able to purchase the good or a service at subsidized prices at lower prices. Indirect subsidy. Today we have a direct subsidy in LPG. How direct subsidy will work out? Look at this very carefully. Step number 1, customer will book the cylinder. Step number 2, cylinder will be sold to the customer at 900 rupees. The distributor will sell the cylinder at 900 rupees to the customer. Now, government will transfer 300 rupees into the bank account of the customer. Can I say, in this second example, that is in case of direct subsidy, the government is providing subsidies to the customer. Now, more to the point, why is government doing direct subsidies? Why not indirect? Because some of you so impatient. Some of you want to learn everything quickly. You are simply commenting, sir, in any case, customer pays 600 rupees. What is the point? Whether I eat like this or like this doesn't matter. Food is entering my mouth. That is your point. Let me explain. Let me explain the difference. Look at indirect subsidies. Look at indirect subsidy. Please do let me know, is Government of India knowing whether the cylinder is going to a household or to a restaurant? Look at the second one, that is an indirect subsidy. Please look at indirect subsidy and do let me know, can Government of India come to know whether this cylinder which is subsidized, not 900, 600 rupees, is it going to a house or is it going to a restaurant? That is very important. Why? Please understand this. Whenever you purchase a cylinder for commercial purposes, those cylinders are different. The weight of the cylinders are different. The prices are much higher. Much higher. Government does not provide any subsidy on it. In fact, they will impose higher taxes on it. Why? Commercial. Very simple logic. Commercial usage. So government should know whether this subsidized cylinder is going to a household or is it going to, let's say, a commercial purpose. Now, under direct subsidy, can Government of India do that? Think of it. Under direct subsidy, can Government of India do that? That is, under direct subsidy, can Government of India come to know who is getting this cylinder? Of course, yes. Of course, yes. Right. Second point. Earlier, under indirect, lot of households in India had multiple connections. Lot of households had multiple connections. 2 LPG connections were there in lot of houses in India. And what is the problem with having 2 LPG connections? They will get LPG cylinders at 600 rupees. Somebody else who actually requires subsidy, because the expenditure was incurred by the government, somebody else who actually required LPG subsidy was finding it very difficult to get the subsidy. Right? So Government of India said, no, we will identify the beneficiaries. One house, one electricity connection, one LPG connection. Please ask your parents. This was done by the government. Ask your parents. You might not know this, but your parents will know this. All the beneficiaries of LPG subsidies were asked to take their electricity bills, LPG connections, go to the distributor and ensure that there is only one LPG connection in a household. Only one LPG connection. So now under direct, can Government of India ensure that only one LPG connection per household? So that is a basic idea. That's a basic idea. No doubt government will incur expense. And moreover, I'm giving you LPG connection or LPG cylinder of only 1 unit here. Now, please tell me, right? I hope you have understood now. Please tell me, in direct subsidies for LPG connection, can Government of India reduce its overall LPG subsidy? Let me know, right? Let me know. Under the direct subsidies, is it okay if I say government will ensure that its revenue expenditure for LPG subsidies will come down, because they are ensuring only houses will use LPG subsidy, right? They are ensuring that there are no multiple connections in one house. When I say one house, one family. Don't say, sir, right, one family is there in the first floor, second family is in the second floor. 2 different families, 2 different connections. Right, so argument is simple. Government is able to reduce the subsidy expenditure. Government is able to ensure right beneficiaries are getting subsidies. But is this also the best mode? Are there any issues related to this model also? Experts argue that under DBTL right now, 12 cylinders are provided. For 12 cylinders, government provides the subsidies. For 12 cylinders, government provides the subsidies. The model, many experts say the model has a flaw. What is the flaw? Government says, pay 900 rupees, purchase a cylinder. I will transfer 300 rupees to your bank account. Now, please apply this logic to a very, very poor household. Have a look at this. Apply this particular logic to a very, very poor household. Don't you think you're asking a poor household to pay 300 rupees upfront and you will give the 300 rupees later to the house? Don't you think that 300 rupees will be a very big burden on the household? Think logically. Please think logically. You're telling the customer, pay 900. The 300 subsidy, I will transfer it later to you. Don't worry, I will transfer it. But if it is a very, very poor household, 300 rupees itself becomes a very big burden for them. And that is a precise reason. Many of the times you will see that the household will get the subsidy, get the LPG connection, but they will not go for refilling of LPG cylinders. Correct? Have you seen this happening? They'll not go for refilling of LPG cylinders. They'll again start burning firewood itself. Right? That is one of the small flaws in this model. One of the small flaws. And there's one more problem with this. Many experts say government doesn't have to provide subsidy for 12 cylinders. Not required. Why? Please look at your own house. Look at your own house. If the family size is of 5 people, because generally we assume average family size is 5 people. So if the average family size is 5 people, for 1 year, at the maximum, they will end up consuming 5 to 6 cylinders. National average is 4, by the way. At the maximum, they will end up consuming 5 to 6 cylinders. and now you are giving subsidies for 12 cylinders. Does it not mean you're again promoting inefficient utilization of cylinders? Yes or no? Please think of it. 6 is sufficient, but you're giving 300 rupees for 12. So they'll simply say, anyways, I'll get 300 rupees for more cylinders. So inefficient utilization can be promoted. So again, there are flaws. There are small, minute flaws. But please understand, look at the bigger picture. Please look at the bigger picture. Whatever flaws are there, your argument should be to plug those flaws. Your argument should be to address those flaws. Don't say direct subsidies is useless then. Don't say earlier subsidy was better, we'll shift to earlier subsidy. No, you should say, okay, flaws are there. We should take reforms. We should take measures to address these flaws. Okay, so direct as well as indirect. One classification, direct as well as indirect. Next one, universal and targeted, already discussed. Third one is conditional and unconditional. Conditional and unconditional. Very simple question to all of you. You have heard to the schemes discussion earlier. Please tell me, is a FAME initiative conditional or unconditional subsidy? Think of it, a FAME initiative. We have discussed FAME earlier also, right? Faster adoption of manufacturing of electric vehicles, right? FAME initiative, is it conditional or unconditional? It's a conditional. It's a conditional subsidy. What do you mean by conditional? You will have to satisfy certain condition. You will have to meet certain conditions. Once you meet conditions, only then you will be given subsidy. If you do not meet the conditions, no subsidies. Very simple logic. If you don't satisfy the conditions, government will not give you subsidy. I'll give you one more example. There is one scheme of Government of India, Pradhan Mantri Matrutva Yojana. Under that, pregnant and lactating woman is given certain amount of support. Right? Cash subsidy is given. But government says, I will give you the benefit, I'll give you the cash subsidy, but you will have to go to a hospital, get the child delivered in the hospital. Institutional delivery is a condition. Once the child is born, you will have to get the child vaccinated. If you do not get the child vaccinated, I will not give you income support. Right? Third one, once the child is born, you will have to get the birth registered. If you do not get the birth registered, I will not give you income support or the cash support. So can I call this as a conditional subsidy? All of you okay? Can I call this as a conditional subsidy? Now what about unconditional subsidies? What about unconditional subsidies? Absolutely no conditions are imposed. You do not have to satisfy any performance or you do not have to meet any kind of behavior. For example, PM Kisan, 6,000 rupees are given to you. A farmer will get 6,000 rupees income support. Please tell me, is there a condition that farmer has to cultivate crop X only? Again, look at performance. You will have to look at performance or behavior. That is condition. Is there a condition that farmer has to work 5 months in a year? No. Is there a condition that farmer has to produce 500 kg of rice? Absolutely no. So there are absolutely no conditions over the performance or the behavior of a beneficiary. Unconditional subsidies. Unconditional subsidies. So conditional, unconditional. Finally, one more set, implicit, explicit. One more set, implicit and explicit. Slightly tricky. Many of you will get confused with the direct and indirect. Listen very carefully. Whenever government will incur cost, I'll repeat, whenever government will incur expenses, incur cost, such subsidies are called as explicit subsidies. Such subsidies are called as explicit subsidies. How can government incur a cost or expenses here? Government will identify the beneficiaries. They'll say, these are the people, these are the companies, these are the beneficiaries for whom I will give subsidies. So government will give out money. Government will incur expenses. Such subsidies are called as explicit subsidies. Now do let me know, any subsidy that we have discussed so far, right? FAME initiative or Matrutva Yojana, right? Pradhan Mantri Garib Kalyan Anna Yojana, PM Kisan Yojana. Can I say in all these schemes, either directly or indirectly, either directly the subsidies are given to beneficiaries or right indirectly, that is basically indirect subsidies are given to the beneficiaries. Can I simply say government is incurring expenditure? Correct? Government is incurring expenditure. Yes. On the other side, implicit subsidy. On the other side, implicit subsidy. Let me start with a very simple example. Implicit subsidy. Railway transportation. Railway ticket prices. Railway transportation, railway ticket prices. If you're traveling in a railway, there is a general class. There is a general class ticket. Government says actual cost for a general class ticket, let's say hypothetically is 10 rupee. Actual cost, if I want you to issue a ticket in a general class, actual cost for me is 10 rupee. But what I will do is, I will not charge you 10 rupee. I will not charge you 10 rupee. I will charge you 7 rupee. Rather than charging you 10 rupee, I will charge 7 rupees to you. Now, please do let me know. Here is Government of India providing subsidy to the beneficiary. Think of it. In this example, actual cost is 10 rupee, right? The government should have charged you 10 rupee, but government is not charging 10 rupee. It is charging 7 rupee. Can I say government is providing subsidy to a traveler? But here, government is not incurring any expense. There is no cash paid by the government. There is no expenditure incurred by the government, either directly or indirectly. Such subsidies are called as implicit subsidies. Right? And in this example, government is incurring a subsidy of 3 rupee. Government is incurring a subsidy of 3 rupee, but government is not paying out any money. But there is a subsidy. There is a subsidy of 3 rupee. Such subsidies are called as implicit subsidies. So explicit, where money payment is done by the government. Implicit, where subsidies are given, but no money is paid. No expenditure is incurred by the government. That is called as implicit subsidy. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Right. So implicit subsidies are also provided. Explicit subsidies are also provided. In fact, yesterday there was one article. Right. Yesterday there was one article in Financial Express regarding explicit subsidies. There was one article in Financial Express yesterday regarding explicit subsidies. And some of you are asking, sir, why does government do this? Why does government do this? Logical behind this is, general class in a railway can be used by anybody, but mainly it will be used by poor people. Correct? Anybody has a problem with this statement? You can also take a general class ticket. I can also take a general class ticket. But we can also take the sleeper class. We can also take AC tier 3, tier 2, tier 1 class tickets. But please think of it. Don't you think general class tickets are mainly used by the poor households? That is the precise reason. That's a precise reason government says, no doubt, I should be collecting 10 rupee, but by collecting 7 rupee, there is a under recovery for me. I'm losing 3 rupee here, no doubt. It's a subsidy for me, but I will do it for social welfare. I'll do it for social welfare. That is the argument of government. And there is a criticism also. There is a criticism. What is a criticism? On one side, you're focused on social welfare, but on the other side, railways are incurring losses. Done? All of you okay with this? On one side, you are achieving social welfare, good, right? That is one argument. On the other side, by not collecting that additional 3 rupee, your revenues are lesser, your expenses are higher, your revenues are lesser, railways are incurring losses. What is the point then? So I hope you understand this. I hope you understand, because ultimately, who will pay money for incurring all these expenses in railways, construction of roads, etc.? Taxpayer. You will pay taxes. I pay taxes. So taxpayers' money will be utilized. So that is a criticism. That's a criticism part. Can we go forward? Can we go forward? Okay, so this is basically the discussion regarding implicit and explicit. Can we go forward? Anybody has a doubt, please do let me know. Otherwise, we can take a break now. Sir, government needs to pay money as expenditure is 10. My dear, government doesn't pay money here. Government doesn't transfer 3 rupee from its pocket. I hope you understand my statement. Some of you are saying, sir, government has to pay money here. Where? You please tell me, where has the government of India paid money whenever the ticket prices are lower? Do you think government of India will transfer money from consolidated fund 3 rupees to railway ministry? Have you seen that? No, government doesn't do it. Government doesn't do it. Okay. Sir, but many people have two-cylinder connection. My dear, whenever you take LPG connection is one. You will have an option single cylinder or double cylinder. Check, please check. Please check. Ask your parents, right? You might not know how the system works, but whenever you apply for a LPG connection, let's say a household will apply for an LPG connection, they will give an option. You want only one cylinder or two cylinder? Logic is that if you want only one cylinder, deposit will be lesser. If you take two cylinders, deposit amount will be slightly higher. Logic is one cylinder is I'm using one cylinder, other one is a spare. Another one is extra, so that I will use it whenever the first cylinder runs out. That's a concept. 12 cylinders per family given direct subsidy on yearly basis. Is it correct? Yes. Subsidies for LPG cylinders is direct now. If government will not pay to railway, then it will loss incurring for railway. Did I not say this? Did I not say railways is incurring losses? Let me know. Did I say it or not say it? Please listen carefully. Sir, but okay, same question. How can government give subsidy on fertilizer? I'll discuss that. Fertilizer subsidies after the break. I'll discuss that. Have patience. Okay, any other questions? Please do let me know. Any other questions? Subsidizer, fertilizer subsidy, I'll discuss after the break. But anybody else has any other question? What is explicit subsidy? I'll repeat it again. Explicit subsidies are those subsidies where actually government will incur expenditure. Government pays money. How? PM Kisan. Will government incur expenditure? Let me know. Right? Indirect LPG subsidy. Indirect LPG subsidy. Will government incur expenditure? Direct LPG subsidy. Will government incur expenditure? Food subsidy, fertilizer subsidy. All these are explicit subsidies. Okay. Sir, in PM Kisan, there is a condition of certain limited fields. My dear, listen very carefully. PM Kisan, if you are owning land, you are covered. That becomes targeted. Do you understand my statement? PM Kisan, if you are owning land, then you are given subsidy. It becomes targeted. It's not a condition over your behavior. I hope you understand this. What is the meaning of behavior of performance? Government will give you 6,000 rupees. You must use it for cultivation of only crop X. That is behavior or performance. I hope you understand this, right? So it becomes targeted, not conditional. Okay. So then how government recovers the incurred losses in railways by providing ticket as less prices? My dear, freight rates are generally higher in India. Freight rates are higher. Now, before I take a break, I'll introduce one more concept. Listen very carefully now. Please listen very carefully. One just small concept. There's a term called as cross-subsidization. There's a term called as cross-subsidization. What do you mean by cross-subsidization? Cross-subsidization simply means government will provide a good or service to different consumers, different beneficiaries at different prices. Please listen very carefully. Government will provide the good or service, same good or service to different consumers at different prices. That is called as a cross subsidization. Meaning what? Imagine railways actual cost of transportation is 10 rupee. For passenger transportation, government will charge 7 rupee. For transporting goods, let's say government will charge 12 rupee. So can I simply say part of the subsidies have been covered by imposing higher charges for some other consumer? Is it okay? Part of the subsidies are being recovered. Part of the subsidies are being recovered by imposing higher charges on some other consumer. Government does it. Government goes for cross subsidization in electricity sector. Have you seen in electricity sector? If you're a household, the unit charges are different for you. If you are a commercial entity, per unit charges of electricity are higher for you. Cross subsidization. Railways, transportation of a good, slightly higher price. Transportation of a passenger, lower price. Cross subsidization. Okay, done. So let me go forward now. Let's take a break. After this, we'll come back to the discussion. Start with the concept of one more classification of subsidy. Time is 8:10. We'll restart at 8:25. Time is 8:10. We'll restart at 8:25. Take a break. Okay, welcome back. Good morning. Am I audible? Am I audible? Please do let me know. Okay, let's start. Let's start. So one more classification and one more set of classification regarding subsidies. First one is input subsidy. What do you mean by input subsidy? Whenever the government will provide subsidies on the inputs, for example, a farmer will purchase fertilizer, government will provide subsidy. Farmer will purchase electricity, government will provide subsidy. So whenever the government will provide subsidies on the input, these are called as input subsidies. Second one is price subsidy. Second one is price subsidy. Let me ask you a very simple question. All of you know that government will provide 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. Correct? Government will provide 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost. All of you okay? Anybody has a difficulty in this? But please understand, when government wants to provide 5 kgs of food grains free of a cost, government will have to spend money, purchase food grains and provide it to you. Very simple. Government will spend money, purchase food grains and sell. Sell means provide it to you. So when government will spend money, purchase food grains, transport food grains and give the food grains at 0 rupees, can I say the difference between the total expenditure incurred by the government and 0 rupee is price subsidy? All of you okay with this? It is the difference between a price at which the government will procure. FCI is nothing but the government, Food Corporation of India. Government will procure and sell food grains in the market. So difference between the price at which they will purchase and price at which they will sell, that is called as a price subsidy. Okay. Third one is export subsidy. Everybody remembers the kind of export subsidies which are given by the government? Please do let me know. Everybody remembers what kind of export subsidies are given by the government? MEIS, SEIS, etc. Right. So for promotion of for promotion of exports, government will also provide subsidies which are called as export subsidies. Next one is infrastructure subsidy. For the development of infrastructure, government will provide certain subsidies. For example, many of you ask me, sir, what kind of infrastructure? There is a scheme which we'll discuss later under agriculture. There's a scheme by the name of Agriculture Infrastructure Subsidy. Agriculture Infrastructure Subsidy, AIF, right? Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. It's not subsidy, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, AIF. Under Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, government will provide lot of subsidies for the development of warehousing, for the development of processing centers, etc. So whenever government will provide subsidies for the development of infrastructure, that is called as infrastructure subsidy. This one is much more easier. This classification is much more easier. Infrastructure subsidy means subsidy given by the government to promote development of infrastructure. Any example? We have Agriculture Infrastructure Fund, AIF, Agriculture Infrastructure Fund. We also have, right, let's say SMAM, Submission on Agriculture Mechanization. Submission on Agriculture Mechanization. On agriculture mechanization. For example, please do let me know, all of you heard of the policy of government where they are promoting drone usage in agriculture? Think of it and do answer to my question. Government of India is promoting usage of drones in the agriculture sector. Government will provide subsidies for people to purchase drones. Under which scheme? This is the name of a scheme. Submission on Agriculture Mechanization. Under SMAM, government will provide subsidies for purchasing of agriculture drones. Okay, so a lot of infrastructure subsidies are also provided by the government. So infrastructure subsidy, export subsidy, price subsidy, as well as input subsidies. Right, so these are other types of subsidies given by the government. Now, some of you are asking, sir, how government will provide subsidies in fertilizer? Let me explain. Please listen to me very carefully. Whenever you use the term fertilizer, what does it mean? What do you mean when you say fertilizer? Fertilizer is nothing but nutrients. Simple. Fertilizer is nothing but nutrients. What kind of nutrients? Nitrogen, phosphorus, sulfur, right, etc. So potassium is also there. There are a lot of nutrients which are needed for the plants. The plants require these nutrients for the growth. For example, again, just a similarity, all of you will understand automatically quickly. When you were children, even when I was a small child, please do let me know. All of us drank Complan. Some of you might be doing even today, right? Perfectly all right. I'm not going to criticize you for that. We drank Bonvita, Boost, Horlicks, etc. What was the logic? Why did our parents give us this? They said, drink Boost, you will get energy. Drink Horlicks, your height will grow. These are the nutrients that we required. In the same way, even the plants will require nutrients. Plants will require nutrients for the growth. Now, what if soil does not have sufficient nutrients? So we will simply apply fertilizers. We will supply the nutrients by supplying fertilizers. So in the market, please understand three very important nutrients. Three very important nutrients are NPK, nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. Nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These three are very, very important. And these three in different quantities are available in fertilizer whose names are urea. Right, in the market you will get a fertilizer urea. You'll also get a DAP, diammonium phosphate. Before you start asking me what is long form of DAP, please look at the bottom of the table. Third one is MOP, muriate of potash. These three are very, very important: urea, DAP, and MOP. For example, if you purchase urea, if you purchase, let's say, 100 kg of urea, out of 100 kg of urea, 46% will be nitrogen. Which means if you supply 100 kgs of urea to a plant, you are simply supplying 46 kg of nitrogen to the plant. Right? On the other side, if you supply muriate of potash, if you apply muriate of potash 100 kgs, 60%, 60% will be muriate of potassium only. So different quantities are available in these fertilizers which are available in the market. Now this is one very important point. Second very important point, government provides the subsidies on all these fertilizers. How they will provide it, I'll let you know. Just give me some time. Government will provide subsidies on all of these fertilizers, be it MOP, be it DAP, be it urea, or even complexes such as NPKs. You'll also get combination of NPKs, nitrogen, phosphorus, potassium, and sulfur. NPKs complex fertilizers are also available in the market. So government will provide subsidies for all of them. But understand the next point. Who will provide subsidies in India? It is Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. This can be asked in UPSC. Please be very careful. On the fertilizers in India, who will actually provide subsidies to the farmers? It is the Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. I am telling this for a simple reason. Imagine UPSC will ask you in a prelims, UPSC will ask you, which of the following ministries will provide agriculture subsidies in India? You will choose, by default, you will choose Ministry of Agriculture. Am I correct? If this I had not mentioned in the slide, don't you think by default you will go to Ministry of Agriculture and your logical reasoning will be agriculture fertilizer, agriculture ministry. It makes perfect sense. So agriculture ministry is correct. No, it is a Ministry of Chemicals. Ministry of Chemicals and Fertilizers. Remember this. This can be asked in UPSC prelims. Just a technicality. That's a technicality. Right? Nothing difficult here. Technicality. Now this is a point. Now come to the other points regarding fertilizer. In case of India, I'll come back to this point. Just give me some time. I'll come back to this point. In case of India, what is the situation for fertilizers? What is the situation of fertilizers? Point number one, in India, we do not produce all the fertilizers, and whatever fertilizers we produce, we do not produce in sufficient quantity. Please remember my statement. In India, we do not produce all the fertilizers in the first place. For example, muriate of potash. Look at the second graph here. Muriate of potash, right? It is imported. Muriate of potash is not produced in India. The reason being, whatever raw materials you require to produce muriate of potash, we do not have it in India. We do not get the raw materials. That is the reason, whatever is the requirement of MOP, we simply import it. We simply import muriate of potash into India. So point number one, We produce fertilizers, but we do not produce a sufficient quantity, and we do not produce all the fertilizers as well. And that is the precise reason you will see on the left side. If you look at urea, sufficient quantity of production is not there, and that is the reason we will import urea into the domestic market. Now I'll keep on giving certain statements. Please listen to these carefully. Can I say urea is highest produced in India? Please look at it. Please look at the graphs and do let me know. If I'm wrong, correct me. Urea is the highest produced fertilizer in India. Point number 2, urea is the highest imported fertilizer in India. Urea is the highest imported fertilizer in India. Right? That is point number 2. And I'll show you one more graph. I'll come back to this. I'll show you one more graph. Please look at it. It provides the information regarding fertilizer subsidy. It is giving information regarding fertilizer subsidy. Now look at the graph and correct me if I'm wrong. Urea gets the highest amount of subsidies in India. Within fertilizers, urea gets the highest amount of subsidies in the fertilizer. So highest production, highest consumption, obviously highest consumption, highest imported, as well as highest subsidies are provided for urea only. Now question is, sir, how does Government of India provide subsidies for urea, for diammonium phosphate, as well as for muriate of potash? How does Government of India provide subsidy? Understand these concepts. Do not mug up calculations. Do not by heart calculations. These calculations are just to make you understand, not exact numbers, because from one year to next year, numbers will keep on changing. Now, come back to the point here. In case of urea, government will provide subsidies. Government will provide subsidies by controlling the MRP for urea. I'll repeat the statement. In case of urea, government will provide subsidies for urea by controlling what is the MRP for urea. Meaning what? Imagine I'm a manufacturer. You are the government. 838. Congratulations, you are the Government of India. I'm a manufacturer of urea. I have manufactured a bag of urea. I want to sell it in the market, including profit, etc. I want to sell it in the market at 900 rupees. I want to sell it in the market at 900. But you will tell me, sir, don't sell it at 900, sell it at 300. I'll say, okay, I'll sell it at 300. Now, the difference between these two, that is the MRP decided by you. MRP decided by you, and the actual cost for me, the difference between that will be given by the government in the form of subsidy. This is okay with all of you? Very simple concept. Anybody has difficulty? Government will decide MRP. What is the selling price? Government will decide. And government says, whatever is the actual cost you wanted to sell and the MRP, the difference between that, I will give it in the form of subsidy. This is how Government of India will provide subsidies for urea. Don't you think this method is inefficient? Think of it. This method is inefficient. I hope you understand this method is inefficient. And as I expected, some of the students do not listen to me at all. Sir, where is the profit? There is no profit. My dear, tomorrow, do me a favor. Tomorrow when the video is available, go exactly 1 minute before this point. 8:39, go exactly 1 minute before this. I told this, but anyways, you will not even keep on listening. Right? So 900 I said, including profit. You want to sell it in the market at 900, including a profit. So government will say, sell it at 300, I'll give 600. This is inefficient. Let me prove it. Just give me some time. This is inefficient. You'll understand it when I give you example of one more methodology. Nutrient-based subsidy. There is one more methodology called as nutrient-based subsidy, NBS. In nutrient-based subsidy, this was introduced from 2010 in India by the government. Under the nutrient-based subsidy, whatever nutrients you are consuming for manufacturing of a fertilizer, whatever nutrients you are consuming per kg, government will fix a subsidy. I'll repeat the statement. whatever nutrients you are consuming, right? You are consuming potassium per kg, government will give you subsidy. And government says per kg I'll give you X rupees, just a hypothetical number. Per kg I will give you X rupees subsidy. If you are consuming 16 kgs to manufacture fertilizer, you will get 16x rupees in the form of subsidy. Per kg of nitrogen, government will fix a subsidy. And if you consume 20 kgs per kg into 20 kgs, you will get subsidy. For phosphorus, government will fix a subsidy per kg. How much you consume, based on that, government will give you subsidies. So look at the concept of nutrient based subsidy, and the name itself is self-explanatory. Nutrient based subsidy, that is, for every kg of nutrient, government is going to fix a subsidy. Hence it is called as a nutrient based subsidy. For example, couple of years ago, I repeat, couple of years ago, because government will keep on changing the subsidy. That's the reason I'm saying do not by heart calculations. UPSC is not going to ask you these calculations. Let's say hypothetically, for 1 kg of nitrogen, N is nitrogen, by the way, N is nitrogen. For 1 kg of nitrogen, let's say 18 rupee was fixed. 18 rupee was fixed. Okay. For 1 kg of phosphorus, right, let's say 14 rupees was fixed. For 1 kg of potassium, 10 rupee was fixed. Now, how subsidy is calculated? Let me show it to you. Have a look at muriate of potash. Have a look at muriate of potash. Muriate of potash. Muriate of potash is 60% potassium. Meaning what? If you produce 100 kg of muriate of potassium, you will consume 60 kg of potassium. So for 1 kg, government will give you 10 rupees. I'm rounding off the number. Rounding of the number. These are in decimals. Don't worry. So 10 rupee into 60 kgs of potassium. Can I simply say, if I produce 100 kgs of muriate of potassium, government will give me 600 rupees. Is it okay? If I produce 100 kgs of muriate of potassium, government will give me 600 rupees. What about urea? I'm sorry, what about diammonium phosphate? In case of diammonium phosphate, it is 18% nitrogen. DAP contains 18% nitrogen and 46% phosphorus, which means if you purchase 100 kgs of diammonium phosphate, 18 kgs is nitrogen, 46 kgs is phosphorus. So for 1 kg of nitrogen, 18 rupees. So 18 kgs into 18 rupees. For 1 kg of phosphorus, it is 14 rupees. 46 kgs into 14 rupees. So for 100 kg of DAP that I've manufactured, government will give me 950 rupees. So 958 rupees a subsidy. Right? Many of you are asking, should we buy heart it? Absolutely no. Please do not buy heart it. Why? Listen to me. I don't know why you people are not listening to me. Did I not say from 1 year to the next year, government will change subsidy? Tell me. I don't know why some of the students do not care whatever I say. Did I not say from 1 year to next year, government will change subsidy? Which means this year when you're writing the exam, government would have already changed these numbers. Government would have already changed these numbers. So why do you want to remember them? What is the point of remembering it? Absolutely no. But you tell me, is the concept of nutrient-based subsidy clear to all of you? Let me know, is the concept of nutrient-based subsidy clear to all of you? Now tell me, compare between urea subsidy and compare that with nutrient-based subsidy. Which one do you think is much better methodology to give subsidies? Let me know. Let me know. I'll repeat it. Compare between subsidies given to urea and diammonium phosphate. Which one do you think is a much better way to provide subsidies? Don't you think NBS is a much better way? Correct? NBS is a much better way. Now you will ask me, in that case, sir, why is Government of India not giving NBS even in case of urea? There have been recommendations. There have been recommendations. Multiple committees have recommended that government should shift to NBS even in case of urea. But the government generally says, if I shift to NBS, there will be a lot of black marketing of urea. There will be a lot of smuggling of urea. right? I'll tell you a very simple concept here. I'll tell you a very simple concept. Right now in India, urea is highest consumed. Highest consumed. Now, please tell me if because of shifting to NBS, because it will happen, think logically. Because if you shift to NBS, don't you think market price of urea will increase? If you want to know it very clearly, urea right now for a bag of urea will cost you somewhere around 270 rupees. I'm not giving you exact number, don't worry. Will cost you somewhere around 270 rupees because the subsidy given by the government is very, very high. On the other side, the DAP as well as MOP, government gives subsidy. Government gives a subsidy. Government doesn't decide MRP. Is it okay? Government will give subsidy for DAP and MOP. Government doesn't decide MRP. Who will decide it? Companies. Whoever is selling it, they will decide the MRP. And the MRP for both the DAP as well as MOP is more than 1,000 rupees. Is more than 1,000 rupee. MRP is more than 1,000 rupee for DAP and MOP. And for urea, it is 270. Now, very simple question to you. You will shift urea also to, right, let's say NBS. Will the market price increase or not? Market price will increase. Right? Don't you think that will hurt farmers in India? Very simple question. Don't you think that will hurt farmers in India? Of course, yes, it will hurt farmers. And think logically as well. You already know that urea consumption is highest in India. If urea prices will go up, farmers will purchase fertilizers at higher prices. Don't you think cost of production will also increase? Cost of production will also increase. And if the cost of production increases, if farmer will sell the food grains in the market, they will sell it at a higher price. That can contribute to food inflation. If government wants to purchase at MSP, now government has to offer higher MSP because the cost of production has increased. So do you understand the complications here? Do you understand the complications in the system? It's not that easy, right? Many of you will simply say, yes, sir. Then why is government of India not doing it? It's not that easy. Policy implementation is not that easy. Can we go forward now? Can we go forward? All of you okay with whatever I've discussed so far? How government of India will provide subsidies for the urea? How government will provide subsidies for DAP and MOP? Any doubts? Sir, it is not clear. What is not clear? Until unless you tell me what is not clear, I will not understand what is not clear. For me, it will not be clear as to what is not clear for you. What about remaining in DAP 64 after adding? What is the question? What about remaining in DAP 64 after adding? I don't understand the question only. Okay, please clarify the question. What example you gave? Which example, Baba? You tell me which example. I keep on giving multiple examples. Which example? You'll have to be very specific. You say it is not clear. I say, what is not clear? The example. Which example? Be very specific with respect to question. Do not give a broad statement. Okay. So please answer me also. My dear, what is your question? Tell me what is your question. Only then I can answer you. Why government is giving subsidies in this decimal form? Don't you think it will lead to more calculation problem? When you produce, you will not produce 1 kg. Are you under the impression that you will produce 1 kg of fertilizer, 10 kg of fertilizer? My dear, you will produce tons of fertilizers. Tons. So when you produce a tons, whether it is 2 decimal or 3 decimal, don't you think those issues would be addressed there itself? Think logically always. Think logically. Subsidy is given to producer consumer in DBT. I'll come to that. Just have patience. I'll come to that. Okay. Okay. Let me go forward. Agriculture urea is most subsidized, most produced, most consumed, most imported, and most physically controlled. Now, what is this most physically controlled? Government will control in the sense government will tell how much fertilizer has to be sold in which region. I hope you understand how much fertilizer has to be sold in which region. government will decide. That is called as physical controlling. Even today, do you know that government of India will allocate kerosene for the states? Let me know. Even today, government of India, do you know that government of India will decide how much kerosene has to be allocated to the states? That is called as physical controlling, right? How much quantity will go to which state, which region, that is decided by the government. So urea is most subsidized, most produced, most consumed, most imported, and most controlled. And please tell me now, based on the discussion that we had, if urea is 270 rupees per bag and others are at least 1000 rupees, don't you think farmers will consume very high quantity of urea? Let me know. If urea is 270 rupees and others are at least 1000 rupees, so don't you think farmers will consume maximum quantity of urea? Of course, yes. Right? Maximum consumption is of urea. But what is the problem? If consumption of urea is very, very high, what is the problem? First one, what about government subsidies? Think of it. What about government subsidies? Government subsidies for urea are already very high. Revenue expenses will also be very high. Second very important point. Whenever you talk about urea, nitrogen, it's nothing but nitrogen. Have you heard of algal blooms? Have you read about algal blooms in your ecology and environment? Eutrophication process. Algal blooms, eutrophication process. So don't you think if you're going to apply lot of nitrogen, keep on applying nitrogen, the fertility of the soil will be destroyed. That impact apart, if there is a rainfall, nitrogen will get floated, will be carried and will be deposited in lakes, will be deposited in ponds. Nitrogen content in water will increase. That will lead to destruction of lakes. That will lead to destruction of ponds. Right? So these are certain issues. These are certain problems associated with higher consumption of nitrogenous based fertilizers in India. Okay. So in case of DAP and MOP, government will pay the subsidy based on the quantity, whereas quantity means how much nutrients you are consuming. Whereas in case of urea, government will fix maximum retail price, provides a subsidy for the domestic producers as well as importers. And for both of them, they'll provide subsidies. Imports are canalized. What do you mean by canalized? Canalized means government will decide who is allowed to import urea in India. I'll repeat the statement. What do you mean by canalization? Government will decide who is allowed to import urea into India. It is generally done by these agencies: Rashtriya Chemicals and Fertilizers, National Fertilizers Limited, right? India Potash Limited, etc. These kind of government agencies only are allowed, or only these agencies are allowed to import urea into India. Okay, right? Movement of fertilizers is also controlled by the government. It is as per the direction of the government. So these are some of the points regarding fertilizers, subsidies in fertilizers. Now, what is the problem? What is the problem in fertilizer subsidy? Point number one, government expenses are very, very high. Government expenses are very, very high. Revenue expenditure is very higher. Fertilizer subsidy account for a large chunk. I repeat, fertilizer, food, these two are very important. Fertilizer and food subsidies account for a large chunk of explicit subsidies of government of India. These account for a very, very large chunk of explicit subsidies of government of India. There is a lot of black marketing also for fertilizers. Black marketing means rather than selling through the government appointed, let's say government appointed or government notified shops, somebody else in the middlemen, etc., they'll start selling it to you. All of you understand black marketing? The government has stated that these shops, these are the licensed shops, these are supposed to sell fertilizers, but no, somebody in the middleman will start selling these fertilizers. And you will ask me, sir, why they do it? Profits, earnings, very, very high. Reason being, in case of India, please understand, agriculture sector is majorly affected by monsoon. Everybody will agree? Anybody who says, no, sir, right, monsoon doesn't have any impact on agriculture sector in India. In fact, there is a very famous statement regarding this. Very famous statement. Indian agriculture dances to the tunes of monsoon. Have you heard of this or not? India's agriculture dances to the tune of monsoon. If monsoon is excess, agriculture sector will suffer. If monsoon is deficit, agriculture sector will suffer. So India's agriculture sector is very much influenced, very much affected by how much monsoon rainfall we have. And because farmers are very much concerned, they want to purchase fertilizer at that specific time in that particular window. Now, what if sufficient fertilizers are not available? Because think of it, how many of you are under the belief that the demand for fertilizer will not change? Please think of it. Please think of it. How many of you are under the impression that demand for fertilizer will not change? My dear, demand for fertilizer will keep on changing. Why? What if you are cultivating a crop which requires higher consumption of nutrients? Don't you think that will lead to higher demand for fertilizers? Yes or no? For example, many of you ask, sir, how is that possible? No, I don't think so that will happen. Please tell me, between pulses and cereals, which one requires more fertilizers? High school level question now. High school level question. Between pulses and cereals, which one do you think demands more fertilizer? Cereals. Some of you are saying pulses. No, pulses fix nitrogen. Pulses add nitrogen. High school level question now. Do you remember? Root nodules are there. In the nodules, right, certain microorganisms are there. They will fix atmospheric nitrogen, etc., etc. So I hope you understand. It's basic high school language, high school question now. They will fix nitrogen. They will add fertility to the soil, whereas cereals will take out fertility from the soil. In fact, this was the point which was discussed earlier also in one of the economic survey many years ago. Economic survey said that's the reason we should promote cycling of the crops, diversification of the crop rotation is hence very important. All of you understand this? Crop rotation hence is very, very important. Even mixed cropping will help you. But come back to this. Come back to the point here. There is a lot of demand based on various factors. Good rainfall, more cultivation, right? Farmers will cultivate more of cereals, more demand for fertilizer. So demand might suddenly rise up in the market. Then unscrupulous middlemen, etc., they will try to make profits by black marketing fertilizers. That is one concern. Inefficient subsidy which is given to manufacturers in India, urea subsidies. And third one, there is a huge disparity. Disparity means a difference. There is a huge gap in the usage of fertilizers. For example, please have a look at it. According to economic survey, the data will keep on changing. According to economic survey, the standard that we should be consuming in India is that for every 4 units, on an average, for every 4 units of nitrogen, we should be consuming 2 units of phosphorus and 1 unit of potassium. NPK ratio, all India, NPK ratio should be 4:2:1. 4:2:1 NPK. But because urea is so easy to get, so cheaper compared to others, lot of farmers end up consuming a large quantity of urea. Right? For example, have a look at this. In 2018 and 19, the ratio, which is supposed to be 4:2:1, has become 7.1:2.7:1, which means consumption of urea is very high. And already we have discussed what is the problem with very high consumption of urea. Done. So disparity in the consumption is also observed in India. In fact, economic survey also says just around 20% of the villages in India, just around 20% districts in India account for more than 80% fertilizer consumption. Right? Just less than half of the districts in India account for more than 80% of fertilizer consumption. More than 80%. In fact, the data given was 84%. Half of the districts in India account for 84% fertilizer consumption. Meaning what? Remaining half are simply consuming 16% fertilizer consumption. Right? Very, very huge disparity. Huge disparity in the fertilizer consumption. Okay, so these are some of the issues associated with fertilizer along with fertilizer subsidies. Now, what has the government of India done? What has the government of India done? We'll discuss a lot of reforms in fertilizer. Understand this very carefully. Now, point number one, all of you heard of nano fertilizers? We'll not discuss that today. Later we'll discuss it. All of you heard of nano fertilizers? Government is in fact promoting nano fertilizers. What is the advantage? What is the use of it? We'll understand it under agriculture sector. Please have patience. Second, government is also implementing a scheme in fertilizer which is called as a DBT in fertilizers. DBT, direct benefit transfer in fertilizers. Now, how DBT in fertilizers will work, let me explain it. But before I explain DBT in fertilizer, one very important concept I want to share it with you. I want you people to know it because many of the students will be confused. One is a direct subsidy. One is direct subsidy. Second one is direct benefit transfer. Many of you will be under the impression that both are one and the same. No. One is a direct subsidy. Second one is a direct benefit transfer. Please understand, direct subsidy is a situation where government will ensure that subsidy amount will go to beneficiary. The subsidy amount is given to beneficiary. That is called as a direct subsidy. Whereas a direct benefit transfer is a program. It is a program or an initiative of Government of India. It is a program or initiative of Government of India. Please do not get confused between both of these. Direct subsidy is the subsidy which is given to beneficiaries directly. For example, LPG subsidy. Government will transfer the money into the account of the beneficiary. Direct subsidy. But direct benefit transfer means it is an initiative. It is a program of Government of India wherein government will identify who is the right beneficiary. I repeat, government will identify who is the right beneficiary and ensure that the subsidies either directly or indirectly will go to these beneficiaries. All of you able to understand this? I'll give you examples. Have patience. But do let me know. All of you able to understand what is DBT? DBT is an initiative. It is a program of Government of India. In fact, under DBT, as of now, more than 300 schemes are covered. Under DBT, as of now, more than 300 schemes have been covered. And what is the objective of a direct benefit transfer? Whether this is a direct subsidy or indirect subsidy, doesn't matter. What I want to do is, I want to identify who is the right beneficiary. We will identify the right beneficiary and ensure that the subsidies either directly or indirectly will reach the right beneficiary. That is called as a direct benefit transfer. All of you okay? Anybody has a problem with what is a direct subsidy and a direct benefit transfer? Now come back to the discussion here. DBT in fertilizer. DBT in fertilizer. Earlier, what used to happen? When there was no DBT, what used to happen? Understand this carefully. Step number one, producer, manufacturer will produce fertilizer, will sell these fertilizer to the farmers at subsidized prices, at lower prices to the farmers. Just to make you understand, I'll take urea. I'll take an example of urea. For the fertilizer, manufacturer will produce it and will sell it to the farmer at 600 rupees, assuming the actual cost, 300, at 300 rupees, assuming the actual selling price was 900. Now government will provide subsidy, step number 3, of 600 rupees to manufacturer. All of you okay with the sequence? Earlier, what used to happen? The producer, manufacturer will sell it at subsidized prices. The government will transfer the subsidy to the producer. This used to happen earlier. Now, please tell me, look at the example 1, that is non-DBT. Look at the example 1. Please answer to this question. If you are the government, is there any way to find out who is the farmer, how much fertilizer they are purchasing? Let me know. Non-DBT. I'm talking about only example one. Non-DBT. Can you find out who is a farmer? No. Right? Which farmer is purchasing how much fertilizer? No. And moreover, will you be able to find out if this fertilizer, rather than being sold to the farmer, will be sold to a company? Will be sold to a company. Will you be able to find out? And this is also very important. Why? All of you will agree with me if I say fertilizers are nothing but chemicals. Let me know. All of you will agree with me if I say fertilizers are nothing but chemicals. Nitrogen, it's a chemical. Phosphorus is chemical. Have you not seen usage of these chemicals in industries? And don't you think these chemicals are also useful in industries? For example, matchmaking industry, the matchstick industry, they use phosphorus. What about hazardous chemicals industries? They will use a lot of these chemicals. Explosive industries, of course, they will use a lot of these chemicals. So what is the guarantee that the manufacturer of fertilizer is selling all the fertilizers to only farmers and taking subsidy from me? There is no way for the government to find out, because manufacturer will simply give data to government saying that, okay, I produced 500 tons of fertilizer, I sold it, so give me the subsidy. So earlier it was very difficult for the government. Now look at DBT structure. Under direct benefit transfer, same process with a slight twist. Here is the producer. They will supply these fertilizer to the shop. Same, right? Let's say 900 rupees actual selling price. Now the farmer will go to the shop. Provide his biometric authentication. The farmer will go to the shop, fertilizer shop, provide his biometric authentication. Aadhaar, best example, Aadhaar. Farmer will provide the thumbprint, a receipt is generated. In the system, a record is generated saying that farmer ABC has purchased 50 kg or let's say 500 kg of fertilizer. Now, please do let me know, once the receipt is generated, once the record is generated and it is maintained in a database, now can Government of India ensure subsidized fertilizers are going to farmers? Think of it. Now under DBT, same process. Farmer will go to the shop, provide authentication, purchase fertilizers, and now government will transfer subsidy to the manufacturer. Right? What is the difference now? The difference is that government is ensuring subsidized fertilizers are going to the farmers. Right? It is going to the farmers. Again, sir, what if the farmer sells there? What if they do this? Ifs are a lot. There are a lot of ifs and buts. But you tell me, is DBT structure better than non-DBT or not? I do agree. There are a lot of ifs and buts. I know. Tell me, is DBT structure better than non-DBT? Is government at least ensuring only farmers are purchasing? What they do with that, you cannot control that. It literally means now government has to come behind you. If I'm a farmer, I will purchase fertilizer. Government doesn't have any work. They will have to keep on following me only. What I will do with this fertilizer? Will I sell it to somebody else? Will I sell it to a company? Will I use it in agriculture? That is not possible, right? That is not possible, right? So I hope you understand. It's not at all possible. But what is the objective here? DBT is much better than non-DBT. At least that you will have to agree. Okay, done. So this is how the government is implementing DBT in fertilizer subsidy. DBT in fertilizer subsidy. Now DBT in fertilizers is being implemented. Farmer has to identify using Kisan credit card or Aadhaar card. Aadhaar, usually they will use Aadhaar credentials. The subsidy will be credited to the manufacturers. Now some of you will ask me, sir, why? Why are we giving it to manufacturers? Why are we not giving it to farmers? Can I give you certain operational difficulties in this? Operational difficulties in DBT. Because some of you will simply say, Sir, let's transfer the subsidy to the farmer only. Let's transfer the subsidies to the farmer only. That will be much better. My dear, point number one, think of it and do let me know. Government wants a farmer to pay 900 and after certain number of days transfer 600 rupees into the bank account of the farmer. Please tell me, per bag it is 600. If you purchase 20 bags, you'll have to pay 12,000 rupees out of your pocket today. Wait for some days, then you'll get 12,000 rupees. Don't you think that will become a very big burden for a lot of farmers in India? Think of it. Think of the operational issues. Think about the operational issues, right? You earlier you have understood. It was discussed and you agreed with me. Even that particular LPG subsidy, even the LPG subsidy, when the government says I will transfer into a bank account, that itself is a very big issue for the poor household. Now in India, most of the farmers are very poor. Most of the farmers are very poor. You want them to pay 12,000 rupees upfront, then keep on waiting for them to receive money. And second point, all of you reading regarding Manrega, let me know. All of you reading regarding Manrega, what are the issues with respect to bank account, etc., etc. Yesterday also, day for yesterday also, for last 3 days. Now, what if there is a mismatch in the bank account, and that 12,000 rupees will go and fall into somebody else's account? Think of operational issues. Think of operational issues also. Third one, how will you find out who is a farmer in the first place? Let me know, right? I will ask you a question. How will you find out who is a farmer in the first place? Many of the experts said use land records. Use land records. But tell me, because of a process of sharecropping, tenancy, etc., don't you think land will be owned by someone else, but cultivation will be done by someone else? Does it make sense to you or not? Land will be owned by someone else and cultivation will be done by someone else. So lot of operational issues, lot of operational difficulties, right? That is a precise reason as of now. As of now, DBT model, government is following this only, right? Government is following this model in the DBT in fertilizer. Next one is a direct benefit transfer. We'll take it up later. Don't worry. Later in the sense next week. Next one is a concept of direct benefit transfer. We will take it up next week. Okay. Let's solve the questions. Let's solve the questions. And I've told you, I've given you around 19 articles, all of them related to what we are discussing in the classroom. Please solve. Please solve all these particular questions. Okay. Now let's solve the, I'm sorry, please read all these articles. Let's solve the questions now. Okay, let's start. %49 have answered correctly. The price of any currency in international market is decided by World Bank. Does World Bank decide price of Indian rupee versus dollar? No. Demand for goods and services provided by the country concerned? Yes. Stability of the government of the concerned country? Yes. Economic potential of the country in question? No. Economic potential does not determine exchange rate, right? What is the growth of the country? That will definitely determine the exchange rate. So 2 and 3 are correct. Right option for the question will be option B. Okay, option B, 2 and 3 only. Okay, next one. 63% have answered correctly, which means 37% are not revising. Why? Did we discuss capital account? What kind of transactions are there under capital account? Foreign loans, are they part of capital account? Yes, my dear. Table I've given a table. At least look at that. In NCRT also they have given table. In Tamil Nadu board book also they have given table. My question is, if 37% are answering wrongly, what revision are you doing? Please do let me know what kind of revision are you people doing. Foreign direct investment, I've written this also in the table. Portfolio investment, institutional investors are also referred as portfolio investors. 4 is also correct. Remittances are part of capital account or current account? This is part of current account. So 1 to 4 are correct. Right option will be right option B. Right option is option B. How government stability will determine foreign exchange? My dear, will you invest in Pakistan? Let me know. We have discussed this also. It's not that I'm throwing something new. Will you invest in Pakistan? Will you invest in India? Will you invest in Sri Lanka? Will you invest in right any other country where the government is not stable? No, you will invest in countries such as India because you feel government is very stable. USA government is very stable. This we have discussed. It is written in the slide also earlier. Okay, next one. 70% have answered correctly. The balance of payments, of a country is a systematic record of all import and export transactions of a country during a period, normally year. Statement is correct. In fact, today morning itself I used this statement. Yesterday also we have used this statement. All the transactions that will lead to import of currencies, export of currencies, these are called as import and export transactions. That is the balance of payment. Okay. Goods exported from a country given a year, is it balance of payment? No, it is just a part, one transaction. Okay, economic transactions between government of one country to another. 20% have said C is correct. My dear, balance of payment, does it consist only government transactions? Does it consist only government transaction? What about your remittances then? What about imports and exports by private sector companies? Right? So no. Capital movements from one country to another country, FPI, FII, FDI, is it balance of payment? No. Some transactions under balance of payment. Okay, so right option is option A. Right option is option A. Okay. 48% have answered correctly. Tricky question. Why? I'll tell you. Many of you will not read contributors for the decline correctly. Many of you would have misunderstood what does that actually mean. Which of the following are the contributors for the decline of CAD? Which of the following will reduce the CAD? That is a question. That is a question, by the way. Okay. Restriction on non-essential imports. My dear, if government will impose restriction on non-essential imports, will the current account deficit come down or not? Of course, yes. Current account deficit will come down. In fact, right, I will tell you today's newspaper. Please read today's newspaper, Hindu newspaper. Right, which article you are supposed to read from today's Hindu newspaper? First one, there is a very big article on Adani. Editorial, there is an article regarding Supreme Court judgment, a very recent judgment regarding SEBI investigation, etc. Read that. After that, there's a very big article regarding, right, again same, how do you interpret Supreme Court judgment? Read that also. Second article. Third article, in business page there are two articles. One regarding one authority to provide the, let's say, insurance for exports, right? Export promotion guarantee committee, right? Export promotion guarantee company, EPCG, right? The export, something of this sort, right? There's an article to promote exports. I'm unable to recollect the acronym. That is there, first in the top. Read that. After that, there is one more article, bottom, right side bottom. There is one more article in the middle. That is Mr. Jai Shankar, right? Government of India imposing certain restrictions over imports into India. Read that article as well. So I want you to read these four articles for today's Hindu newspaper. Please read them. Okay. ECC, tongue twister. ECGC. Okay, finally. ECGC, because I was confused with one more scheme. There is one more scheme called as EPCG. Government of India also has one more scheme by the name of EPCG, Export Promotion of Capital Goods. I was just confused between ECGC and EPCG. So it is ECGC. Please read that article. Okay. Basically, again, you'll ask me what is ECGC. It is an authority which will provide insurance coverage for exports. It will provide insurance coverage for exports. That's it. Okay. So restriction on non-essential imports. If you impose restriction on non-essential imports, imports will come down. That will reduce current account deficit. Yes. Export demand slowdown. If your exports, right, will go down, current account deficit will widen. So it will not contribute to reduction. Increase in exports, exactly opposite to the second one. Yes, it will help us in reducing current account deficit. So 1 and 3 are correct. Right option will be option A, 1 and 3 only. Okay, next one. 71% have answered correctly. Convertibility of the rupee implies what? Being able to convert rupee into gold? No. Allowing the value of rupee to be fixed by the market forces, that is floating exchange rate. Freely permitting the conversion of rupee to other major currencies and vice versa. Don't you think option C is the correct one? We have discussed this yesterday. What is surprising for me? I should say shocking. To be very no, to be very blunt with you, I should say shocking. Did we not discuss the concept of convertibility yesterday? Not 1 year ago, not 1 week ago. Yesterday, my dear. Capital account convertibility, right? The current account convertibility. In fact, I'd written the statement also at the top of the slide. Right? It shows how much revision you people are doing, how much attentive you're in the classroom. Convertibility means how freely, without any restriction, can you convert rupee into dollar, rupee into pound, etc., and vice versa. Right option will be option C. Okay. Next one. Okay, 43% have answered correctly. Slightly tricky, that's the reason. Consider the following statements. The effect of devaluation of a currency is that it necessarily improves the competitiveness of domestic exports in the foreign market. Anybody has difficulty in statement 1? Let me know. Anybody finds it difficult? If rupee is devalued by the government, our export competitiveness will increase. That's straightforward. Correct. That's correct. Increases the foreign value of the domestic currency. Meaning what? It simply means I'm writing $1 is equal to 50 rupees. $1 is equal to 60. So can I say there is a devaluation? Assuming it is done by the government, it is nothing but devaluation. What does the second statement mean? Increases the foreign value of the domestic currency. It means Indian rupee has become more valuable in the foreign market. Indian rupee has become more valuable, right, in the foreign market compared to foreign currency. Absolutely no. Increases the value of the currency? No, it does not increase the value of the domestic currency. In fact, it increases the value of the foreign currency against Indian currency. Okay, improves the trade balance. Please think logically. Does it necessarily mean, underline the term, does it necessarily mean, take India for example, if there is a depreciation or a devaluation, does it necessarily mean our trade balance will improve? Take India for example, that's the reason I'm saying take India. Necessarily means even if it is not possible, then it is wrong. Take India. If Indian rupee depreciates, does it necessarily mean India's trade deficit will come down? No, that is not guaranteed. That is not guaranteed. If you're a net exporter, it will work in your favor. But if you're a net importer, no, it might actually widen the trade deficit. Okay, so it will not improve the trade balance necessarily. That is very important. Necessarily. Now, in fact, look at this. Instead of necessarily, what if I replace this with likely? Look at the play of the words here. Please look at the play of the words. How can UPSC play with the words? Understand this. Instead of necessarily, what if I replace that with likely or possibly? Now, with the term likely or possibly, can I say third one is possible? Arey Baba, even now some of you are giving wrong answers. 2 anyways is wrong. 2 anyways is wrong. With devaluation, Indian rupee value will not increase. In fact, it will fall down. 2 anyways is wrong. So can I say if instead of necessarily, I'll replace that with likely, right? If I replace that with possibly, then can I say 3 is possible? All of you agree? 3 is possible. Again, don't worry about options. Some are saying, sir, but combination is not there. Don't worry. I'm saying UPSC can play like this with words. At least now all of you are okay with my argument. UPSC can play with you. Necessarily is not same as necessarily is not the same as likely, right? So this way UPSC can play games with you. Please be very, very careful. Okay. So because it is not likely or possibly, it is necessarily asked here. No. 3, necessarily it will not improve trade balance. It can worsen trade balance. So right option is option A, 1 only. Okay. Right option is option A, 1 only. Okay. Just a second. Okay. Now I'll solve this because I've already discussed this in the classroom yesterday. It's basically the same question. With reference to Indian economy, consider the following statements. An increase in the nominal effective exchange rate indicates appreciation of rupee. Tell me, day for yesterday, not yesterday, day for yesterday. If near index goes up, do you remember this? What does it mean? Rupee value is increasing against basket of currencies. Rupee value is appreciating against basket of currencies. All of you okay with this? Right, please remember the day for yesterday's discussion, right? I took index numbers and I explained to you how does it mean, what does it mean, etc. First one is correct. An increase in real effective exchange rate indicates improvement in trade competitiveness. one bottle in India is equal to 3 bottles in USA, etc., etc. Do you remember that? If India's rear index goes up, India's trade competitiveness will not go up, rather decrease. Second one is wrong. Second one is wrong, straightforward. It will decrease. And the third one, increase in trend in domestic inflation related to inflation in other countries is likely to cause increasing divergence between near and rear. Is it correct? If inflation levels are different, automatically gap between near and rear will also be higher. The divergence will also be higher, right? There will be larger divergence because logic is near doesn't include price levels, rear includes price levels. If price levels keep on changing, the divergence between both will also keep on changing. That is also correct. So 1 and 3 are correct. Right option for the question will be option C here. Option C is the right one. Okay. So descriptive questions are there. We'll take it up on Monday. We'll take up descriptive questions on Monday, not today. Now, before I wind up the discussion, if there are any issues, any concerns regarding what I've discussed, please let me know. Otherwise, we can wind up the discussion. So don't you think that these schemes and freebies are disrupting our economy? I cannot simply say all the schemes are bad. Please understand my point. You cannot simply come to a conclusion, blanket conclusion, and say all the schemes are bad. Absolutely no. Now, question is, the schemes that have been announced either by the center or by the states, are they required? Even if they are required, are they targeting or are they universal? And even if they are targeted, what is the impact of that on the fiscal deficit and revenue deficit? All these factors will determine whether should we have these schemes. If yes, to what extent? Is the logic okay? Next, 18 plus 46, 64 in DAP. What about remaining after subtracting? There are many other components, many other raw materials. For example, gas. Gas is also used in the manufacturing of fertilizers. Okay. Next one. Sir, why government is not simply giving subsidies on nutrients to every manufacturer by not judging whether it's agriculture or industries, then government can impose extra subsidies or tax on them. Please tell me, how do you envisage it operationally? How much tax will you impose on which industries? Because if you impose, let's say, 5% additional tax on hazardous chemicals industries, do you assume that all of them are consuming same amount of fertilizers? If yes, then I hope you understand that, right? Complications, lot of complications in terms of operationalization. Okay, under which chapter? Okay, you please check. I don't think so. In Nitin Singhania, a separate chapter is there for subsidies. I've told you this already. In books, whenever they're talking about agriculture, they'll discuss fertilizer subsidy if they have discussed. Right? In IGNO material, some of the concepts are discussed, but you don't need to read IGNO for this. So from one chapter to another chapter, it will keep on changing. But as far as I'm concerned, one book where you can easily get some of these concepts that I've discussed is agriculture chapter. Tamil Nadu Board, 10th book, NCRT 11th and 9th. Agriculture chapter, lot of these subsidy concepts are being discussed. Food subsidy, fertilizer subsidy, etc., etc. Okay. I'm not able to remember and retain much of the information while writing descriptive answer. Please suggest. My recommendation is practice more, revise more. I do understand many of the students will feel difficulty in writing answers. That happens because it's new for you, right? Writing economic answers is something that you're doing for, let's say, very, very recently now. It requires practice. Please practice as much as possible. Okay. Okay. Any other question? So corruption can happen in case of DBT if seller arranges different persons for biometrics. Yes, it can happen. Lot of issues are there. For example, I don't know how many of you have read. I asked you to read it. How many of you have read Monday's Hindu newspaper, Tuesday's Hindu newspaper? If you people have read it, you will know for a fact government's decision of implementing DBT, there was a leakage even in DBT. There are a lot of leakages even in DBT. That is because under DBT, amount has to be transferred from account to account. Very simple logic. Under DBT, amount will be transferred from the account. In many cases, it was found that people, right, fake people had opened accounts, and from those, into those fake accounts, money was transferred. So that also has happened in the past. And now question is, how do you plug those? Government is taking a lot of measures to plug those also. Okay, done. Any other question? Okay, let's stop the discussion here. Let's stop the discussion today here. Again, a very important reminder, the link for the newspaper articles have been given to you. Please download using that link, read those articles. I would strongly advise read those articles. All the articles are important. You can give a feedback on Monday whether these articles were useless for you. These articles did not add any value to you. Were these articles not at all relevant for UPSC? You can give me a feedback, I'll take it. Okay, so that's it from my side. Have a great weekend ahead. Take care, read, revise. Okay, so take care. See you again on Monday, 6 a.m.